To welcome everyone to council meeting this evening. All councilors are present. We're going to invite David Larson to lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance and then invite Scott Darrington to give opening remarks.
Please rise. Repeat the pledge with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful to be gathered this evening as we discuss the items and issues with freedoms and opportunities that we have. Protecting those freedoms, our freedoms and freedoms of others. Efforts and times as we have our meeting tonight, that we can be watched over, that the Spirit will be with us, that we can have that companionship as the
Amen. Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda? This is the updated agenda.
no changes.
None? Council?
Mayor, make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Motion by Eric, second by Diana. All in favor?
Aye.
Carries. Okay, let's have an open session. If there's anything that is not a public hearing or not on the agenda that you want to talk about, please come up and state your name and address. Or just your name, sorry. Thank you. Yeah. 12 years, habits.
My name is Nathan Stoker. I'm 334 South, 1210 East, Pleasant Grove, Utah. First of all, I just want to say that as much grief as I give you guys online, I do respect you guys a lot. Without swearing, I do respect you a lot. I do respect you what you do and the burden you have and the decisions you have to make. The amount of people, especially in the negativity that can come from that, must be really hard to take at times, and I can understand how that would feel. And I just want you to know that myself, personally, I do love that you guys, the dedication you do for the city. It is a great thing you do for the city. So I don't mean any disrespect in anything I say, so please don't take it that way. I know you have some very hard decisions to make about this budget and about the things that are pertaining to our roads. And, I mean, we all love our park services. I would do anything that I could possibly to save and even to add or expand to those park services. When it comes to the road initiative and the things that we have to be able to do that, I don't feel that we should ever limit ourselves to those scope. The main point behind the roads initiative is to minimally fund our roads, to make sure we stop the deterioration. I know Lynn was really big on that during the elections, that if we don't do something now, it is going to be catastrophic for us in the future. We're looking at minimum 6-fold increase on costs if we don't start doing something, and the sooner the better. So how do we go about that? There's lots of different ways, and I was really hoping to get some better ideas about what we can do, and I'm hoping we can still hear some of those things. Looking over some of the other cities and some of the things that they do to be able to help fund these services and things like that. Is one of them is the 10% or tenth of a percent sales tax. This is on top of the 6.75 that Pleasant Grove is currently charging the city to make it 6.85, which is comparable to American Fork, Orem, Linden, and Pleasant Grove. And I believe Cedar Hills is renewing theirs this year as well. Looking over some of their figures, American Fork's sales tax revenue in general was about $8 million. From this tax of 0.1%, they're able to draw $830,000 for their parks and recs alone. This amount increases every time there's an increase in sales during the city. It allows those services to be able to expand and to be able to grow and not to be competing so much with the other needs of the city. I think if we moved on to something like that where we could actually separate and keep the parks in a more of an enterprise fund keeping their revenues more secured, so that every time that comes up, we want to build an indoor park for our citizens. We don't have to be saying to them, well, it would take this, but, and then the response is always going to be, well, what about the roads? What about the fact that our police officers don't even have enough batteries for their radios to go through? Like, we have so many needs in this city and so many things that aren't being provided for. It's hard to justify the things that we do want in the city, the things about the parks and the recs that we would love to see grow. I think if we implemented things like that to be able to move more towards an enterprise version of those, we could free up those discussions a lot more. I think the sales tax is a great option. I know as we move more toward enterprise for these funds, we can work on ways to make them more profitable, better advertising, more signage around the pool. There's lots of ways that we can increase the revenue for these services. I know we've explored some of them, but there's just an amazing amount of things that we can do for it. The private sector does really great with these services. I don't know.
Hang on 1 second. How many people are going to speak during the open session? Okay.
So there is a lot more that we can do, and I know we don't want to talk about cuts. Nobody ever wants to talk about cuts, and that's the hardest thing. I think some of the suggestions that have been made about a modified zero-based budget are also a great way to provide some of these services, where we take and we say, what can we postpone for another 2 years? What can be postponed for another year? What can we cut back on just a little bit now, and find those rooms? And that may not be much. It may not be a great amount. But if we do that and we put in that hard work, and I know we're looking at 5 extra people working on this constantly to be able to get something like that going. I think if we really did this, when we come to the citizens and say, we're going to need a little bit of money from you, we have that backing to say, we've gone through the budget, we've increased the revenue, we've gone through advertising, we've gone through all these avenues to be able to increase the amount of funds, and this is how much it's going to take for you as citizens, from you as citizens, to be able to complete the rest of this thing. I think a lot of citizens, everybody that I have talked to, for the most part, there's a handful of exceptions, have supported the idea of some type of increase to be able to provide the services and for the roads. The only thing that I hear from the citizens that are complaining about the fee is that we want to see something from the city first. We want to see some movement, some change. And I know that we've got the 325. I'm not 100% on that number, and I think that is great. We're coming a long way. But when we're looking at the amount that we need, it just doesn't seem like much, and I know that it's been a struggle. So, I mean, a lot of people have been fairly nice. They understand that I do not want services cut, and I would never want services cut. We just need to see some more from the city to be able to say, we do believe in the citizens and the struggle and the stress that is going to cause by this, and we are willing to go through that with you. That we as a city can get together and we can come and find a way to build the roads and to be able to continue our services. Other things that have been mentioned are the citizens
Nathan?
panel.
I think we're
Okay.
out of time.
Fine.
Okay,
Well,
thank
thank you for your time, and I do appreciate it. I do appreciate everything you do.
Thanks,
you.
Nathan. Yeah.
Jacob Zahn, 65 East, 1100 North. Just to dovetail with Nathan. First of all, I am so glad that Nathan sponsored the initiative with the other 5 people on that initiative. He represents us coming together on a single issue, even though we may disagree on other parts of the city and other things that we need to do. I don't necessarily 100% agree with what he just said, but that's okay, because we both agree that we need to fund the roads, and we both agree that a 100% fee is not the solution to that, that we need to come together and have a moderate solution to these massive problems that we have. And so I know that we are today going to be looking at the budget and prioritizing all of the city services, and probably going to be setting a line, and everything below that line will be cut in the scenario that you'll have based on the initiative. I would plead with you to not go in that direction. I plead with you to take the moderate approach. If we had an economic downturn this year of $2.3 million, would we put all of our services in order and just cut the bottom off. We would not do that. Wouldn't do that. Yet, I believe that's what's going to happen tonight. I've come to the city council with the initiative to find middle ground. Last year I came with a proposal that tried to find middle ground. I look back now and see how naive I was, and that it wasn't middle ground. It was requiring too much and not funding enough. I believe the initiative is the way to go now, that we can come together and find a way to fund the roads. Nathan's right. We want to work together. We're okay with sacrifice. We want sacrifice in all areas. No, I'm not a public speaker. Over the past little while, I've said things that people haven't understood, and I haven't been able to get my meaning across. I'm struggling to get that through, to get the message through. And so I just plead, again, I plead with you to find the moderate ground. Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jacob.
Anyone else?
Picked my phone with me so I remember what to talk about. Sandy Carter, 2708 North, 450 West. I'm here to speak about the initiative as well, and I'm confused. I'm confused because we went through, and the only way I can think to describe this, and hope it's not offensive, but it was just absolutely hellacious to get the public safety building bond passed because nobody wanted an increase in taxes. So I find it really interesting now that there's a group of people who want to increase our taxes. People were very unhappy with the city council, the former mayor, and even with all of you right now because they don't want an increase in taxes, but now they do. I agree that our roads need some work. I always find it kind of interesting. People talk about third world roads, and I often wonder, have they actually been on a third world road? I have, and then believe me, these are wonderful streets. It's not to say that we shouldn't have better, but I also recognize the fact that we live in a state that has extreme climate changes. And I'd like to know if there's anyone who actually has a driveway that's not cracked and needs to be repaired. Because no one, I don't care if you have a $2 million home or a $200,000 home, you're going to have cracked concrete. You're going to have erosion. It's a fact of the climate here. We can't alter or change that. It is what it is. I can't drive without getting a cracked windshield. I can't tell you how many windshields I've bought in the 20-some years I've lived here. You know, and I'm bothered by the initiative, and this is why. I'm bothered because if you're going to suggest taking out a huge amount of money out of a budget, you can't just say we want X amount of dollars and not have a very specific plan on where that money's going to come from and what services it's going to affect. And when I say services, I'm talking about people, human beings. It would be like in your own home budget. Well, honey, we've got to cut out 15% of our budget. So does he just tell his wife that? Or do they sit down and look at what they spend their money on? Do they figure out how much they spend on gas and electricity, on their food bill? Do they say, we spend $600 a month on food, we're only going to spend $400 now? I mean, you have to know where that money's going to come from. Does that mean that we delay paying our utility bills and we're always behind? Do we delay and fall behind on our mortgage payments, our car payments? We're not talking about extracurricular activities maybe where I say, sorry, honey, I can't take you to dance anymore, or gymnastics. I don't have the money to pay the fees. You cannot just arbitrarily decide on a figure and then without any support, any proof, any facts, any plan, just arbitrarily decide that's what you want and then force a city and a community to do that. That's not uniting people. I find it very divisive. I'm not happy with it at all. If you're going to come up with a plan, you sure as heck better include every little minute detail. And that includes knowing exactly what services you're going to cut, who you're going to let go, because the bottom line is that's what will happen. It's not just we're going to reduce this service. You're talking about human lives. So, let's get real here. And quite frankly, I really am tired of the contention. I'm tired of a small group of people that I find actually, it's embarrassing. I cannot believe how much Pleasant Grove has been in the news, and it's not good. It's not good. They make it sound as if that none of you know what you're doing, that you're not responsible. And I know for a fact that you are. You care. You care deeply. Nobody does this job for fun. My husband used to be a city councilman, and it was hard. It's very hard work. I appreciate what the people in the city do. This is my first time the last 6-7 years I've been able to work with the community, and it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. It has really opened my eyes, and I appreciate now when I see a city employee or the city trucks, the fire department, the police department, I see any of you, I'm thinking, holy cow, there go some good people. They are working their tails off to make our community the best, protect us, serve us, and make it a happy place to live. And that's what I want, in a responsible way, with all the information. Do not force something down everyone's throats if you don't have an actual plan. And know what's truly going to cost you, because there will be cost. And I personally don't want to see anyone lose their jobs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sammy.
Anyone else?
Dean Hale, 240 South, 1300 East, Pleasant Grove, Utah. I got to respond to that. On February 28th, not very long ago, had a meeting talking about the budget. Mayor, you said the following. If we kind of focus in on the top first, this is when we went over all the different ways to pay for the roads. We need 3.8 million, and nothing short of 3.8 million is what my understanding was when this whole problem was presented and studied by the JUB. So actually we do have numbers. It wasn't pulled out of the thin air. Is that accurate? And let's ask the mayor, and as we're nodding in the video. Okay, so if we, starting with scenarios that don't meet the need, I think we're asking for problems right from the beginning, and we need to be looking at $3.8 million. Now, after you've started with $3.8 million, then you can take a look at the split between what you can repurpose from resources you currently are collecting. He's addressing the city, versus what new resources do you need in order to make up this 3.8 million. And this is where I think it, at a high level, right? It's not rhetoric, again, his words. How much here and how much there? You add the two together, you get 3.8. Then you can get into the scenarios about, okay, what does this work on per residence, per commercial entity, from a fee perspective, a tax. But unless we're starting at $3.8 million, we're not going to solve the problem unless we have a goal to hit 3.8. Sorry. It sounds better when you say it. And then immediately after that, Diane said, I agree. And then discussion went on about how we were going to meet this need. Looked at several scenarios. There's substantial discussion about whether or not the city should put $25,000 more towards it, which would have been 6.5 hundredths of a percent of the total needed, like that's chump change. And then you, Mayor, polled each member of the council, all of whom said, every single one of them said, we don't want to fund the need for the roads out of the current budget. We want to do it with a fee that we apply to the citizens. Next day, I and 5 others went out and signed this initiative. Now, taking that plan that you discussed on the record, you said, we're paying for it all, and we're doing it with a fee, and we're not slashing anything. Within a week, you same people, you especially, Eric, are saying that will slash the budget. We have to have a plan. You come up with the plan. You're the ones that have to lead the city. You have no political capital. You have no leadership skills. You're not trying to bridge any divide. You state here for the record that, no, we don't want to cut the budget. Then you turn right around and say, doing the exact same thing, we'll have to cut the budget. That's a lie. And any employer, it is too. Well, then you're incapable of coming up with a way
Let's-
to do exactly what you said.
Let's not engage.
I
Just
appreciate
Go
that.
ahead.
That's good information. If I'm an employee of this city and I'm worried about losing my job, it's because I'm being told by people who aren't willing to fight for my job to find a way to manage budgets to where we can meet our obligations as a city without cutting services. Guaranteed. I have friends of mine who are like, I'm going to lose my job. They're coming after me because I just said, hey, we have an initiative that's going to do exactly what the council said that they wanted to do on the 28th of February. You can go look it up. But if you want to go back and forth and pretend like you didn't say that, then you're certainly more than welcome to. And good luck. Because the elephant in the room is even everybody who would prefer that the roads not be taken care of in favor of services still want the roads to be taken care of. Thank you.
You? Anyone else?
Carl Cooney, 2115 North, 180 West. I'm going to start by begging the council to get creative. It's going to take creativity. I've shrunk a business by $2.3 million. But I started out at 4.8, not 12 something, not 36 something. That lovely recession we went through. It can be done. You have to get creative. And the reason that I signed the initiative was, Eric, listen to me, bud. No, you're smirking over there. Listen to me, please.
I'm right here, Carl.
Please. 25,000 against a $2.3 million problem wasn't a sacrifice as far as I was concerned from the city. Everybody's going to have to sacrifice. City, citizens, everybody. But why would we pass a budget without roads being fully funded, at least at the level that they were recommended in 2012? Why would we do that to a service that one of the highest percentage of use services that citizens use? You know, I've been in the rec center 3 times. I drive on the roads every day. I'm not anti-rec center. That's not my point. My point is the roads are one of the highest percentage of use services. Roads and water, sewer, and that. But it's going to take creativity. And firing all the freezes, all this stuff, that's not you're going to have to get creative. That's not creativity. Saying that the city's going to come to its knees, it's not going to come to its knees. It's not. If you're creative. If you want to take it there, I've been there. I avoided my knees. It was painful. But it can be done, guys. It can be done. And I'm going to finish the way I started. Begging you to get creative. Show the leadership that you were elected to be. And lead. You have a chance to be champions. Or you have a chance to fail. That's the reality. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the open session and move on to item number 6, consent items. Any discussion on the consent items? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Mayor, make a motion to approve the consent items.
Second.
We have a motion by Eric, a second by Sid. All in favor?
Aye.
A motion carries. All right, now we don't have any board appointments tonight. No presentations, so we'll move on to item 9, or section 9. Item 9A is a public hearing to consider for adoption an ordinance 2017-14 to amend the standard specification, Chapter 4, Division 3A, pressure pipe culinary water, adding specifications required by the Utah Division of Drinking Water. The request includes modification of standard drawings, Chapter 5, Division 1, Drawing 16, to match modifications in the specifications. Marty.
Mayor, Council, good to be with you again. This item came about with regards to a recent review by the Division of Drinking Water of our standard drawings and specifications for our culinary water system. They've had some updates to their rules, and from that, they've then reviewed our rules or our standards and specifications and recommended that we do some updates to keep within the current state standards. The purpose of these updates in the standards are to come into compliance. A good example of that, there's some leakage testing, for example, on pipelines that require you to have so much leakage over when you do your leaking tests on every pipe, and theirs is a little bit more stringent, so they required us to meet their standard. It's just a minor modification. Bedding under pipe, for example, was originally 4 inches. They've increased that to be 6 inches minimum now under pipes to give a little more protection under the pipe. So there's a few minor modifications that were requested by the Division of Drinking Water. This ordinance allows us to get up to speed to what their requirements are. So I'm be happy to answer any questions that you might have about that. There are a number of things listed there. Most of them are just really minor checks in the system. So,
Any clarifying questions for Marty? Okay, let's open it up for the public. If there's anyone that wants to comment on this item, please come up and state your name. Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back up here. Any further discussion?
Is there any financial impact to this change?
not for the city. It's a matter of developers will have to meet the standards, but the financial impact really would come to us if we didn't meet those requirements, because then we're going to have to do extra work to prove that we're still within state compliance.
The example you gave of this 4-inch to 6-inch, was that theoretical or is that actually part of the?
No, that is one of the items. The standard drawing updates is they require 6 inches of bedding under all culinary water pipes.
Okay. So when we do maintenance work and go in and replace,
Yes, we will
then
have
we
to meet
bring it
that
up to the
standard.
new standard. Okay.
We would do the same thing as any developer.
I'm sorry?
We would do the same thing that we would require developers to do on that.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, Council, I'll make the motion that we adopt ordinance 2017-14, amending the standard specifications, Chapter 4, Division 3A, pressure pipe culinary water, adding specifications required by the Utah Division of Drinking Water, including a modification of standard drawings, Chapter 5, Division 1, Drawing 16 to match modifications in the specifications.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ben, a second by Eric, by voice. Lynn?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Sid?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Diana?
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay, item 9B is a public hearing to consider for adoption an ordinance 2017-15, permanently abandoning 2 stormwater easements on property located at approximately 2093 West Pleasant Grove Boulevard. The city will receive a replacement storm drain water easement on the same property, but at a slightly different location, or at a different location.
Mayor, Council, this is with regards to 2 easements that we obtained through the process of the construction of Pleasant Grove Boulevard. They were necessary in order to get the drainage water off of the boulevard into the existing alignments of existing channels. And you can see here the light blue one was actually more of a retention basin that discharged into the existing channel. And then the green one was a ditch that needed to be constructed to get water over to that. With the future development of that property, we've had a request made to vacate those 2 easements. There's actually 3 easements that will be vacated, but one of them's owned by UDOT, and we've been in coordination with UDOT, and they're in the same process and have the same comments with regards to removal of those. What we've indicated with St. John's Properties at Valley Grove there, that if they realigned the ditch beginning here where it crosses out of the Pleasant Grove Boulevard right of way, and then provided a drainage system that would follow Pleasant Grove Boulevard and then also follow along this future road, which is Granite Way. And so it essentially is just doglegging that infrastructure over to this point. And what we've indicated is that we would like the approval of the vacation to be contingent upon the.
Hold on 1 second, Marty. There are probably 15 chairs here on the front, your left. For those that are in the hall, please come on in. Go ahead, Marty.
So there are, we recommended that it be approved contingent upon providing the infrastructure, which they have been in the process of doing over the past 3 or 4 weeks. So they're putting a new pipe, a 36-inch pipe, beginning at this point down this, and a couple of boxes to connect to the existing infrastructure there. And then it'll be an open channel along this roadway as it gets back to here. And that'll all be worked into the site plan and development of that property. So 2 things: they have to do the infrastructure, get it in and approved. Second thing is that they have to provide us an easement for that infrastructure. If they do those things, then we felt comfortable in recommending the vacation of those 2 easements.
Okay, questions for Marty? All right, it's a public hearing, so let's go ahead and open it up for public comment at this time. If anyone has something they want to speak on this item, Scouts, you're welcome to take 2 minutes each. Just come up and state your name. We'll start with this one right here. All right, while they compose themselves, if there's anyone else that would like to address this item, please come up to the pulpit. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and come back up here. Further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll call for a motion.
Mayor, council, I'll make the motion that we, let's see, are we on D here?
B, like
Excuse me,
board,
I've already gone too far ahead.
2017-15.
Thank you. Make the motion that we adopt ordinance 2017-15.
15, sorry. Go ahead.
Permanently abandoning 2 storm drain water easements on property located approximately 2093 West Pleasant Grove Boulevard. The city will receive a replacement stormwater easement on the same property but in a different location with the specific conditions that we get that second easement and that the developer put in the infrastructure as described.
Okay, we have a motion by Ben and a second by Lynn. By voice, Diana? Yes. Eric?
Yes.
Sid?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay, moving on to item 9C. Thanks for coming, Daniel. A public hearing to consider for adoption an ordinance 2012. Is that right? What should it be? 2017-16. We okay, Tina? Okay. To amend the Pleasant Grove General Plan land use map by applying the land use designation of low-density residential to approximately 0.19 acres of land recently annexed into Pleasant Grove Boulevard, located at approximately 899 East, 1190 North. Ken?
Does that say annexed into Pleasant Grove Boulevard?
You know,
Pleasant Grove City.
my eyesight and my ears, okay? So
hoping
it does
wasn't
say
just
Pleasant
annexed into a
Grove.
boulevard.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Okay, so as referenced, this is the recent annexation that we approved. What should have happened at that time that we omitted in that ordinance was a designation of land use and zoning on that property. If you don't do that by that ordinance, then automatically the land use designation goes to your lowest density and as well as the zoning. And so currently we're still waiting for that plat to be recorded. But as soon as it is recorded, if we don't assign a zone and a land use designation to it, it won't reflect the same as what is currently happening in that area. So that's what we're doing here tonight. It's basically a housekeeping item. Let's see, I'll just skip forward on that. So again, looking at that property owned by Don Anderson, at the end of this cul-de-sac, it was this little piece right here that was annexed in. And the zoning or the general plan land use designation for that area is low density residential. So we are asking that we apply the low density residential land use on the annexed piece as well so that it matches that property. And I'll just go ahead and talk about the rezoning, and then you can have two separate motions.
Okay, thank you.
So the rezoning we're asking for is to take it to an R19 zone, which is what is also reflected on that property and in that area. So again, it's just a housekeeping issue. We just want to make sure that the zoning and the land use designation match what is in that area.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Ken? Okay, please step up here to the microphone and state your name. Thank you.
I live in the lot right next door, 892 East.
Can you point
we have
that
a
out
question-
for us using your
There's a pointer right there.
pointer?
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I got you. Okay.
Maybe back up one so that we can see the lots.
Yeah. I don't see the street nor the lot. Oh, I see.
Right,
Okay.
one
Yeah,
second.
okay.
He'll pull that up. Okay, that helps.
I live in that lot right there, 892.
Okay,
And my neighbors, who I just spoke with, well, my concern is not about this type of thing, but it's related to D down below. Are we going to have a discussion about D?
yes.
Okay. This lot has been a concern for 20 years.
So, one second. Let me make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. Are you asking me about 9D Ordinance
If you
2017-17?
see, this is, they're changing the zoning on this one. And then down in 10D, this
Okay.
same lot is being asked to be moved out of our area. And I just want to make sure we're going to be able to discuss that.
So item 10D will not be discussed this evening. It's being continued indefinitely.
Does it mean forever? I mean, what does that
So
mean?
maybe Ken can explain.
Please.
Okay,
Why don't you let Ken explain what that means?
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Okay, so these two zoning and general land use designations needed to be put into place before we can approve a proposed plat to bring in that annexed portion into the same parcel, make it all one lot as the existing. So in order to do that, we have to create a new plat, which will change the boundaries of this lot, which will make it to be vacated from the plat that it was originally approved in, and create a new separate plat just for that property. It won't have any impact at all that I can think of on the existing neighborhood or existing plat. This is only to affect that parcel.
Let me make sure I'm following you, Ken. This is the item that we're not discussing tonight?
Right.
So what you're saying is the part here that's not currently zoned the same as what's here, once it's zoned the same, then that would be combined and replatted into one plat, one lot. And that's item 10D.
Right, and the reason why we're not wanting to talk about that tonight is because the plat had some issues in regards to an easement between a neighbor to the north and the property owner of the subject property. And so they were needing to resubmit the plat showing the easement according to what was recorded. And we
Okay.
don't know when that's going to be submitted.
All right.
That's why we're saying indefinite.
So let me just make sure. Is that the issue that you're concerned about?
That's my concern.
Okay,
But
so we're not talking about that tonight.
Okay, I won't talk about it, but I would like to indicate that I received a letter indicating they were changing they were going to annex that part. I received another letter saying it was going to be changed from agricultural to residential. And that's what I guess you're doing tonight, right?
Item,
I never received anything.
item 9C and 9D.
I never received anything about 10D where they're talking about taking it out of our plat. I know that's in discussion right now, but I want it made known that we would like to know the results of that discussion of 10D, because if you're wanting to take it out of our area, that doesn't make sense. I mean, you see, there are houses all around it, and there's, well, again, I'm getting to part D, but
Yeah, let's not confuse
we
the
want to-
items tonight.
We want to be notified when that is being done, okay? We were not notified about this tonight.
Okay.
So, there was a rush in our neighborhood about what's going on here. We never received notice. I'd
Okay.
like to make sure that's done, okay?
Alrighty, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I'm sorry, I missed it. Did you state your name?
My name is Richard Clotho. I've lived in that area. I built that house 20
Right.
years ago.
Right.
And we'd like to keep the neighborhood nice.
Thank you, Richard. Okay.
Thanks, Richard.
All right, back to items 9C and 9D. Did
Okay,
we have
again,
any
if
further
I can just
questions?
clarify that the reason why notice was not received by him on 10D is because we realized at the time of noticing that this would have to be pulled. So notices have not been sent out because the plat's not ready. So that's why it's continued indefinitely, which will require us to notice when we do have it on the agenda. So you will receive notice in regards to that item. The plat was never actually received in the format that we required.
Okay, so can we have an offline discussion out of this meeting?
Yes.
His office is just outside the door to the right. Okay, thank you. All right, back on point here.
Okay.
We're having a discussion on 9C. This is the ordinance 2017-16. It's related to 9D 2017-17. We need to have a public hearing on the first item. Does anyone want to speak on item 9C? We have a volunteer? No. Okay. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and come back up here. Any further discussion on 9C? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion to adopt ordinance 2012-16 to amend, 2017, so-
2017-17, 16.
sorry.
2017.
So we'll make the
-17.
-17 to amend Pleasant Grove General Plan.
Dash 16, it's 2017
Right.
dash 16.
Got it.
We got it.
Okay.
Got it.
To
Thank
amend
you.
Pleasant Grove General Plan Land Use Map by applying the land use designation of low-density residential to approximately .19 acres of land recently annexed into Pleasant Grove located at approximately 899 East, 1190 North, Big Springs neighborhood.
Okay, we have a motion by Eric and a second by Lynn. Just to clarify, you're correct, whoever said it, it was read incorrectly several times. The correct ordinance is 2017-16.
Yes.
So that's what's being voted on. All right, by voice, Diana.
Yes.
Eric.
Yes.
Sid.
Yes.
Ben.
Yes.
Lynn.
Yes.
Okay, that's unanimous. Now, moving to item 9D, we still need to have a public hearing on this one. This is to consider for adoption an ordinance 2017-17 to rezone approximately .19 acres from A1 agriculture to R19 single family, located at approximately 899 East, 1190 North. Ken's already given his explanation. We've looked at the map. Any further clarification from Ken? All right, let's open it up for public hearing then. If anyone wants to speak on item 9D, please come up and state your name. Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back up here. All right, any further discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion, I'll try to do better this time, for adoption of ordinance 2017-17 to rezone approximately 0.19 acres from an A1 agricultural zone to a R19 single-family residential zone located at approximately 899 East, 1190 North, Big Springs neighborhood.
We have a motion by Eric and a second by Diana by voice. Lynn?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Sid?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Diana?
Yes.
Motion carries. Moving on to item 9E. This is a public hearing to receive comments on the proposed Pleasant Grove City fiscal year 2016-2017 budget amendment to reflect actual and anticipated expenditures in the amount of $521,740 for the Rocky Mountain Power Streetlight Agreement. Marty?
Mayor, council, over the past 4 or 5 months, we've talked about this a number of times with regards to the current streetlights in our city. They're currently owned by Rocky Mountain Power in the large majority. We do have a couple of lights that are ours in the 30 to 40 range, but the other 1,100 or so of those lights are owned by Rocky Mountain Power. Kind of give you the spill here, and then we can kind of go through the next few items with regards to the budget amendment. And then we've got the other items with regards to the agreement for Rocky Mountain Power. Right now, we asked Rocky Mountain Power what the cost would be if we went and purchased the street lights from them. This is pretty common. There are a number of cities that have done this, and American Fork is one that's done it recently in the last couple of years, and we've talked with them, and they've seen a great benefit from doing that. And so what this proposal is for they went through, assessed how many assets would be turned over to us, what the value of those assets are, and then sent that to us with a full document of their agreement and what those assets are that would be turned over to us. That amount in that agreement was $521,740 to acquire that asset. We went then, kind of went through and tried to figure out, okay, well, what does this mean for us? What is the costs that we can expect to see to decrease from Rocky Mountain Power that would justify the acquisition of this asset? And felt that we had some really good numbers presented at that time. The power costs currently are $220,000, around that amount that we paid over the last couple of years. We feel that with the maintenance and power costs, so the power cost if we own the lights is substantially less than if we have to pay for power and maintenance and ownership of those lights. And so it dropped the total cost for power and maintenance down to $94,200, which is a difference of about $125,800. Now, we understand that brings an increased liability for if something gets damaged, we need to replace that pole. If something goes wrong, it's at our own cost. We kind of looked at that and figured out that we needed about $35,000 to be able to feel good about if it's damaged and not covered by somebody's insurance type of thing, then we would repair that. And so essentially what it came down, bottom line was that we figured we could save about $90,000 a year as it currently sits today if we own the lights. Now we have to pay off that $521,000 of initial debt to be able to acquire those. So the proposal for the budget amendment is to use some of the sewer general fund, which we feel good about, taking that $521,000 into the general fund as a loan with an interest rate of 1.18%, I believe is the rate on that, and then repay that loan back to the sewer fund over the next 5 3/4 years. It's almost 6 years. That would fully repay that with that $90,000 savings every year. And then at the end of that 5.5 years or so, then we would be able to utilize that $90,000 back into the budget and have a savings there. So
For roads, right? 90,000 for roads.
that's your guys' call.
Is that part of the resolution? Or?
That's my proposal.
So that's what the budget amendment is for, and this is public hearing, so.
Thanks, Marty.
Any questions for Marty? Okay, it is a public hearing. Let's go ahead and open it up to the public. Any comment on this purchase of the streetlights from Rocky Mountain Power?
I just have one question. What exactly is the $2,500 for the legal fees on that? Like, what does that entail? Just putting the contract together, or? Well, the proposal right here, the purchase and sales agreement, it says $2,500 for legal transaction costs. So you got it at $511,396, but the total is $5,021,074, and $2,500 is legal transaction costs. I just wanted to know what that was and what it entailed for that amount.
So what she's talking about are the fees. So the contract amount for Rocky Mountain Power is the $521,074 that she's got here. That includes an assessment of $2,500 from Rocky Mountain Power for the legal expenses to execute the contract and agreement. So that's not our fees.
Okay.
That's Rocky Mountain Power's fees to execute the agreement.
Just wondering. Thanks.
Okay, anyone else? All right, seeing none, we'll come back up here. Does this require any action?
It'll come next.
The next one.
Okay. All right, moving on then to item 10A, to consider for adoption a resolution 2017-016, approving the Pleasant Grove City fiscal year 2016-2017 budget amendment to reflect actual and anticipated expenditures in the amount of $521,740 for the Rocky Mountain Power Streetlight Agreement. Any further discussion?
No. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2017-016, approving the Pleasant Grove City fiscal year 2016/2017 budget amendment to reflect actual and anticipated expenditures in the amount of $521,740 for the Rocky Mountain Power Streetlight Agreement.
And I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Diana and a second by Ben by voice. Diana?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Sid?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay, Marty, you're still up. To consider for adoption a resolution 2017-017, authorizing the mayor to sign the streetlight agreement with Rocky Mountain Power and providing for an effective date. Any further discussion on this item?
No, we just need to, so the end of this month is the time that we have to respond to Rocky Mountain Power with the final agreement, so otherwise they have to redo the agreement and come up with a new cost for me.
And it will go up.
I'm sure it'll go up.
Okay, seeing none then, I'll call for a motion.
All right, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2017-017, authorizing you to sign the streetlight agreement with Rocky Mountain Power and providing for an effective date.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Diana, a second by Eric. By voice, Lynn?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Sid?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
And Diana?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Item 10C is to consider for adoption a resolution 2017-018, authorizing the mayor to sign the agreement and notice to proceed with CNL Water Solutions, Inc. for the FY 2016-17 sewer rehabilitation project and providing for an effective date.
We have awarded the project to CNL for the what we call the in situ form, but this is actually a cured in place pipe this year, UV cured pipe for our sewer lining And this is the agreement and notice to proceed. I think I mentioned last week at our work session that they're planning to start this project around the first part of June, and that it will be pretty disruptive to 13th West because of needing to be in that right of way to get this work done. So, but that this is the agreement notice to proceed for that project.
Okay, questions for Marty?
So Marty, is the cured in place UV process different than the in situ form? And is there a reason we switched processes, or is that process not available? Tell us the story, history a little bit.
So this type of product actually is it's a better product when you have a lot of groundwater coming into the pipe that it's hard to exclude from the pipe. The standard process of a fold-in form, in situ form, is that you pull the sock into the pipe and then you expand that and cure it with steam. And it's really hard to get all the temperatures exactly right if you've got water running along that sock. With the cured in place, the UV light actually cures that, and it has nothing to do with steam and heat. It's the UV curing that does that. We've identified a few pipes, and some of them are larger, so a couple 21-inch pipes and a 10-inch pipe. And we felt that this is a better product because of the current inflows into that pipe and the difficulty of doing the other type of cured other pipe lining system. So.
And the disruptions aren't related to the process, just the easement issue. Is that right? I mean, if we do this on other streets, it won't be any more disruptive than in situ form?
No, it's the same process. It's just that we're going to be in the middle of the road on 13th West, and that's a very busy road. It's right in front of Cambria and Pemberley, and those multifamily housing units, which have a lot of traffic on that road. So,
thanks.
Any other questions for Marty?
So a lot of that work will be done, by the way, on the weekends and possibly Sunday, just to get away from that issue, just so everybody's aware. We kind of talked about that last week. But.
Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Make the motion, Mayor, that we adopt Resolution 2017-18, authorizing you to sign the agreement and notice to proceed with CNL Water Solutions for the fiscal year 2016-17 sewer rehabilitation project and providing for an effective date.
We have a motion by Ben and a second by Lynn. By voice, Diana?
Yes.
Sid?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay, item 10D was continued. All right, we're moving on to item 10E. This is to consider for approval a 20-lot final subdivision called Manila Creek Plat B, located at approximately 3000 North 900 West in the RR zone. Ken?
Okay, recently we have looked at a proposed zone change. We've looked at proposals, another plat in this area recently approved in the Alpine School District property up in the Manila area. So this is, it's showing 19, the actual correct number is 20, which is shown on the plat and should be also listed as such on your agenda. In the area of the Manila Creek Park, which is right in this area, and then you've got these three subdivisions right here. So we have approved this subdivision. Tonight we're looking at this one in this location. So there's a closer version. It's 12.82 acres, which includes the addition of the Tanner property, which is an existing lot with an existing home. But because there is a new roadway that will abut their property and will require a little bit of lot line adjustment, they are being included in this development as well. So as shown, their property here on 900 West is lot number 20. So otherwise it was 19 lots that were being prepared as new lots in this area. And I think we also show, the vicinity plan for this neighborhood, how it connects with another plat that's being worked on, not yet coming forward, and the one that was approved earlier. So that's the entire Alpine School District property. So this is the plat that we have here tonight. I've asked Marty to come up and explain what we're doing, a recommendation for a condition of approval in regards to the Tanner property, lot number 20.
With the development of this property, as Ken mentioned, there is the issue with trying to get this radius around a power pole that sits right there, and then it's off the property line slightly to be able to get the radius in there. Scott and I met with the Tanners and discussed the issue with creating a little bit of what we classify as a nuisance strip. It becomes it would potentially be owned by the city, and just a small strip of ground there between the back of the sidewalk and the Tanner property. In order to avoid that, we talked with Ivory. We also talked with the Tanners to see if they would be willing to come into the development and acquire that small strip, so there is no gap there. There isn't something the city's responsible for. It just becomes part of their property. There were some terms that they outlined, which Ivory has put together a development agreement concept with the Tanners to try and address some of their concerns with their fence being up against the right-of-way. Right now it would be off a little bit. They've asked for that to be relocated, a little bit of a landscaping finishing up there on the corner so it looks nice like they've got it. And Ivory has agreed to do that in some terms in the development agreement. That has not been finalized and approved, so we're recommending that we make the approval conditional upon them having a signed development agreement with the Tanners. And when that becomes valid and they have that in place, then we could move forward with the recording and progress of the project. So that's, I don't know that unless there's any questions, that's kind of the stipulations. There were 2 requests made to the city that should be identified, and that is that this went from 0.5 acres up to 0.52 acres. So we added 0.02 acres to the property, which would bring them up into a higher cost for irrigation by 0.02 acres. And they requested that we held their irrigation rate at the same rate since they were willing to accept that property. And we felt good with that decision, as well as they've asked that their property taxes not be increased, and we have no control over that, so that's not something that we can fulfill, and they're aware of that. So, but those are the stipulations they asked us, plus the requirements for fencing and some landscaping features to be done for them. And so they'll finalize that, but we recommend the approval to be based on that condition, that they are able to reach an agreement with the Tanners. Otherwise, they'll need to come back and get a 19 lot approval if they can't achieve that.
Are the Tanners or the developer here tonight? Okay. Did you have anything? You're covering the cost of the relocation on the fence?
Evening, Council. Brian Prince with Ivory Development. Like Marty mentioned, we've drafted an agreement that speaks to having the Tanner property incorporated in the plat in exchange for some landscaping and fencing improvements that they've requested, and that's outlined in the draft agreement that Tina and Marty have received. And we would, in that agreement, it states that Ivory Development would cover those costs and coordinate with the Tanner family on how that's executed.
Okay. So that means after you've given it over, then they become responsible to maintain it.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for the developer? Okay, any questions for Marty or Ken?
I've got a question about, and I appreciate having brought to our attention the secondary water agreement. Is the language of that agreement such that we are free to make changes with future tiers? I mean, how long-term is this commitment?
This will be a separate agreement between us and the Tanners, just letting them know that based on the current tier structure that we'll hold them. If that tier structure changes, then they would be, required to pay whatever that new tier structure is. But as for now, that 0.02 acres wouldn't require them to go into that next year.
Yeah, they're doing us a favor in the long run by taking the property, so we figured it was appropriate to do that.
Yeah, and I'm comfortable with it. I just want to make sure we have the freedom in the future to change tiers if we need to or whatever. Good.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Here, I make a motion for approval of a 20-lot final subdivision called Manila Creek Plat B, located approximately 3,000 north, 900 west in the RR Rural Residential Zone,
Did you make that motion subject to a development agreement?
subject to a development agreement
And then all the,
being executed.
and
Thanks.
all the planning, engineering, and et cetera.
Fun.
I'll second it with all of that.
Okay. All right, we have a motion by Eric, a second by Diana. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Item 10F is to consider for approval a single-lot commercial subdivision plat called Devco Plat B. The new plat includes the vacation of Lot 1 and 2 from Devco Plat A on property located at 1991 West, 680 North in the CS zone. Ken?
Okay, this subdivision plat is the final effort of the developers represented by Dallas Hakes to redevelop the property on the corner of 2000 West and State Street, which has currently been occupied by the Fong's Restaurant and the State Street Grill, and recently received approval by the Planning Commission for the Quick Quack Car Wash. So this is the opportunity for them to take the existing piece, as shown here, and take two pieces, two parcels, and put them together into one single lot. So it's a very simple subdivision process. As soon as they receive approval for this, then they will be eligible for building permit, which I understand is their desire to move forward quickly on the construction of the car wash. So this preliminary plat was approved unanimously by the Planning Commission, and staff recommends approval of this plat.
Any questions for Ken? Okay, a model motion is on page 2. I'll call for a motion. Seeing none, it fails.
We're trying to get to your model motion here.
I want to be model.
I'll make the model motion. I move that the city council recommend for request of Dallas Hakes for a single lot final subdivision called Devco Plat B on property at approximately 1991 West, 1680 North in the CS Commercial Sales Zone, and adopting the exhibits, conditions, and findings of the staff report, and as modified with the conditions below. All final planning, engineering, and fire department requirements are met, and that's what I show.
Okay, we have a motion by Eric,
Second.
second by Sid. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Item 10G is to consider for adoption a resolution 2017-019 authorizing the mayor to sign a purchase agreement with Jason and Anna Christensen to purchase a 0.39 acre piece of real property located at 399 South Locust Ave and providing for an effective date. Scott?
We have a piece of property that we've been looking at as a city for a while on Locust Avenue. If you know where Veterans Memorial Park is, all the way to the front of the rec center, the city owns all that property along Locust with the exception of one home. In the past few years, we've bought up 3 or 4 properties along there, and this was the last remaining property in essence, for future planning of park space and potential recreation expansion. The people that own that piece of property are moving, and they approached the city to see if we were interested in buying it. We have entered into in essence, a REPSI, a purchase contract, a real estate purchase contract, in order to move in this direction. In order for the city to purchase this property, then the city council needs to approve a purchase agreement. The cost of the property and the home is $278,500, which is backed up by an appraisal, also by the idea that they actually had another offer on the property, and they chose to sell it to us instead of that other person, roughly for the same amount. So with that, we would be using our park impact fee in order to purchase this property for the idea of future park expansion or recreation center use. So that is the agreement that's before you in order to go through that and purchase it. Also, if the council approves this agreement tonight, in order to fund the project, in order to fund it for us to purchase it, we will need to do a budget amendment, which we will probably likely have scheduled for our April 18th meeting, and the closing would be soon thereafter if the council authorizes those funds. Any questions?
Scott, I didn't hear you mention the rental agreement
Oh,
that
thank
follows
you.
the purchase agreement.
So part of the deal was, part of the negotiated deal with them is they wanted to live in the property free of rent for a few months. I think it's up to the end of July, as they are transitioning into their new property. After July 31st, then they will pay us $1,000 a month in order to rent that. As soon as they move out, then the house is in good enough shape that we can rent that house until we determine we either need to tear that property down or use the property in another way. Thank you, Tina.
Any other questions?
And does the $1,000 a month represent a fair market value for that rental?
We feel that's, within the neighborhood of a fair market rental. And, as again, that was part of a negotiated deal with them. If, as soon as the agreement says that by the end of December, if they want to continue to stay, then we enter into another negotiation on what that's going to be. So right now, the $1,000 a month is a negotiated rental price for them.
Any other questions? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we consider for adoption resolution 2017-019, authorizing the mayor to sign a purchase agreement with Jason and Anna Christensen. Also, to honor the rental agreement that has been discussed by Mr. Darrington, to purchase a 0.39 acre piece of real property located at 399 South Central Avenue, and providing for an effective date. Thank you.
We have a motion, and a second, and I went deaf again. Did you mention the amount?
No. Scott, can you mention the amount again?
Oh, sorry, $278,500.
Yeah, that.
Okay.
In that amount.
We have a motion by Lynn. We have a second by Diana. By voice, Lynn.
Yes.
Eric.
Yes.
Sid.
Yes.
Diana.
Yes.
Ben.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Question regarding this agenda item. So when we continue to rent the property out after the homeowner has left, that right now that's the plan because we haven't decided further to tear it down. Is that correct?
Correct, yep.
And then will that $1,000 a month go back into the park impact fees, or where will that money go?
Thought about that.
Probably just in,
Probably
probably just in the general fund.
Could-
That's where some of the other homes are going.
Since we're
right?
taking it from park impact, can we put it back into the park
We
impact?
could, yep.
Especially since that area where we're renting it is going to be used for that purpose?
Yep.
Okay.
No, that's the direction the council gives us. We'll make sure that it gets back into the park impact fee fund.
When something like that's done, how does that affect the 6-year time limit on impact fees?
I think I'd have to, I might have to file a report with the state of Utah. I think I'd have to show it. You can have other revenues or because we have interest in those type of things. I'll probably do some research to make sure, but I would think I'd have to show that separately because that wouldn't be the 6-year rule
Okay.
for the impact fees. But I'll do some research on to make sure that we can do that without any
implication or how I report it when I do the annual report.
I mean, one way to do that is not put it back into park impact fee and just earmark it for parks.
Yeah. Okay.
And that way we don't have to worry about the restrictions on impact fees.
That'd be easier. Okay.
So after that's determined, then we probably ought to take a look at how that money is used.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. All right, we're going to move on to item 10H to consider for adoption a resolution 2017-020 authorizing the mayor to execute an architectural services contract with JRCA Architects for the programming, design, and construction administration for the proposed public safety facilities and providing for an effective date.
About 6 weeks ago, the council authorized staff to enter into an agreement with JRCA Architects to be our architect for the new public safety facilities. They have a standard agreement which has been reviewed by Tina and is consistent with their proposal on their fee that they gave us when they went through the bid process. And so this is the agreement that will make them our official architect on the project.
Any questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2017-020, authorizing you to execute an architectural services contract with JRCA Architects, Inc., for the programming, design, and construction administration for the proposed is it proposed still? Can we call it something else? For the proposed public
exist
safety
yet.
facilities and providing for an effective date.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Diana and a second by Eric, by voice. Lynn?
Yes.
Diana?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Sid?
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, I show here item 10I, to consider for adoption a resolution 2017-021 of the Pleasant Grove City Council declaring their support for the current levels of service provided to the citizens of Pleasant Grove and providing for an effective date.
I'll pass this down. There's one for you each. So I've been on, I think it was the March 7th council meeting. I came with some numbers that I've worked with Denise on that and shared with you what a conservative amount of money. I just chose $2 million for how that would impact our city and what that would mean. And I went over that and talked briefly about how it would impact some levels of service employees to our city. And then the next day on our doorstep, we received the initiative. And I think, as we've seen tonight and witnessed tonight, that I think you know where I stand with that. And I've been quoted as bringing the city to its knees, and I won't back down from that. And I'll say it right to the cameras that are rolling here, that I feel that this initiative is harmful to our city. And so that's why I proposed a resolution for you to read over here. It's non-binding, but you can read it over, and I'll read it so you can have it on record here. And so again, I feel strongly that what this initiative does and what I've heard is words of creative, innovative with it. This is the 5 signers. I would have liked to seen tonight what their plan was, what going forward, how that would affect our general budget. But yet I see it thrown back on us as a council. Now you'll see the next agenda item that will address that to a certain degree of what this initiative does to our city. And so with that, I'll read the initiative. And I'm sorry, not a resolution, 2017-021. A resolution of the Pleasant Grove City Council declaring their support for the current levels of service provided to the citizens of Pleasant Grove. Whereas the Pleasant Grove City Council has the ability to exercise the municipal administrative power through the resolution process. And whereas the City Council desires to go on record as supporting the current level of services provided by each department of the city to our community. And whereas the City Council recognizes the need for a sustainable and manageable solution to the road maintenance issue in Pleasant Grove without compromising other services to the community. And whereas the City Council recognizes that the Fund Roads First initiative seeks to dramatically change the current general fund allocations and will result in the loss of funding for critical operating costs necessary to fully fund each department and its role in our community. And whereas, if adopted, the Fund Roads First initiative will necessitate a loss of jobs in various departments connected to services provided to our citizens. And whereas, the City Council desires to declare its opposition to the mandatory budget requirements found in the Fund Roads First initiative as being fiscal or irresponsible in relation to the responsibility the council has to exercise its administrative and legislative powers for the best interest of the majority of the citizens and not just for a single service or single issue. And whereas the City Council recognizes that these mandatory budget requirements will cause significant reduction or loss of level of service currently being provided to our citizens. And whereas the council recognizes that these negative impacts will more than likely result in eliminating certain services to our community in order to fund a single budgetary item of road repair. And whereas those services and departments could include the library, parks, recreation, senior center, pool, and other services that are currently utilized by our citizens. And whereas the council honors the tremendous citizen participation and service that has resulted in our current shared sense of community. And whereas the council also recognizes that the effects of this initiative, if implemented, will impact employee morale and lead to the loss of dedicated employees who may seek other employment during the pendency of this initiative rather than risk losing their job. And on the flip side, therefore be it resolved by the City Council of Pleasant Grove City as follows. 1, the City Council is not in favor of the Fund Roads First initiative because of the negative physical impacts it will cause to our community. 2, the City Council is not in favor of the Fund Roads First initiative because it mandates funding a single service at the expense of an entire community and prevents the council from exercising the statutory authority over fiscal responsibility granted to them by the state legislature. That's it, straightforward.
Tina, you've had a chance to review this?
Yes.
Okay, it meets regular requirements for the
Yes.
state for, okay. All right, discussion.
I've got some questions.
Go ahead, Ben.
Is there a reason we haven't received it in physical form or at all until in the very meeting when we're asked to look
Working
at
up
this?
until the last minute, so you have it.
Who was it drafted
noticed.
with? May I ask
What's that?
who it was drafted with?
Diana helped me with a few things, and that's it.
But it's been reviewed by our city attorney?
Yes.
When did that happen, Tina? In this form? So it wasn't worked on up to the last minute?
We had up until the last minute to work on it. Is that what you're asking?
I'm asking why it wasn't included in our packet. It seems irresponsible to vote on a resolution that hasn't been provided to the council in
I
written
think it
form.
was noticed as way it needs to be, and I'll refer to Tina on that.
Respectfully disagree.
Sure.
There are a few clauses in here that are factually untrue.
Which ones?
For example, there are some whereas clauses that say things like, will result in the loss of funding for critical operating costs, will necessitate a loss of jobs. Not true, factually false.
How?
It won't necessitate any kind of changes.
Sure.
That's up to us, whether
Sure.
or not it necessitates change, whether or not it involves a change.
You have your opinion.
Yeah, it's quite explicit in the language of the initiative. I've read the
Listen.
initiative.
$2.3 million out of a $12.5 million budget will affect our level of services employees, Ben.
It will not necessarily. This says necessitates. We have the option to raise a tax. We have a lot of options that are not anticipated in this resolution.
You said that, not me.
Who is the intended audience for this resolution?
Read the resolution. You know as well as I do that I've been very vocal on this. If you don't agree with it, you don't have to sign it.
I don't agree.
Ben.
I don't agree as a matter of principle to any kind of resolution that was put in front of me on the very moment that it's to be voted on. I
Well,
think that's
you-
unprofessional, it looks like, and forgive the candor, but it looks like a political game and not an actually responsible way to manage or lead a
I think
city.
I've made my intentions very clear since the March 7th, before this initiative even hit. The next day the initiative hit, and I was very clear in my intentions of not supporting this initiative. So you have your opinion. It is what it is.
In the future, it would be more professional to provide written resolutions in advance. In fact, that may be mandated by state law.
I think Tina could answer that.
It's simply mandated to be in written form before you consider it. There's no statutory requirement that it be included in a packet beforehand.
Make a motion, Mayor, that we continue this item.
Okay, we have a motion by Ben to continue. Do we have a second?
Councilmember Stanley, how much time do you think you need to review the resolution?
Generally, I like to read things several days in advance. We don't always get documents several days in advance, but we've never gotten documents that we've been asked to vote on in the very meeting, to my recollection, in the past. So the more time I have to review it and propose changes to the language, I certainly will not sign something that has factual misrepresentations, because I object strongly to false narratives and perpetrating fraud upon the public in Pleasant Grove. So if we don't change some of the factually false statements, it will never have my support, but it's totally unprofessional to request a signature or a vote of endorsement to a resolution that was not provided in advance in a written form.
And that's your opinion. You can say that all you
Okay,
want.
there's a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
And Tina, this is non-binding, is that correct?
This resolution is basically a policy declaration. It's permitted under the law through your administrative powers to declare your opinion on an issue. There's nothing to be done with it. If you mean non-binding in that particular sense, it's not saying that you're going to do anything or that you're binding yourself to anything. It's just saying that you support the current level of service and you do not support the initiative with its funding restrictions. It's just basically a policy proclamation. Could have done it in a proclamation. Eric chose to do a resolution.
How much staff time, Tina, did you invest in reviewing this?
I couldn't really say. I'd say maybe half hour. Eric was in the office, asked me to look at it.
Okay, thanks.
Tina, can I ask a question?
Mostly he just wanted to make sure he could do this. That he was asking for legal advice as to whether or not it was
Okay, let's call the
statutorily
question.
permissible.
Do we have a motion on the table? Do we have a second? Motion dies for lack of a second. Any further discussion?
I'll state for the record an opinion that when we engage in crafting of false narratives and political games and providing resolutions in the day, in the very meeting, when we're asked to have a vote on them, we damage the credibility of our city, and it's a tragedy.
Ben, we can have the conversation now if you'd like, because this is the first time I'm seeing it as well. And reading through it, I agree with what's being proposed by Councilmember Jensen, but we can have the discussion now since it's in front of us. If there's specific things that you propose changes to or ideas that you have, but the language that you're using is pretty harsh and accusatory towards what Eric's proposing in the council. So let's make those changes if you have some. But I think he's bringing forth an effort that we have the opportunity to support. It's non-binding, but it's just showing support for our current levels of service. Is there some changes that you'd like to make now?
Sure. I mean, traditionally, the way that elected officials in every other city in the country express their support for services is through a vote on a budget process. That's how it's normally done. If I don't know who the intended audience is for this resolution, that's a concern. If it has factually false statements and false claims and whereas clauses, that's a concern. If it says I support the current service levels, I think we have some services that are underfunded, and I don't support that underfunding. we should be better funded in certain areas, particularly our roads, but not exclusively our roads. So there are a number of issues with it, whereas clauses I would strike, and I have concerns again about the timing. And I don't think this is probably the best forum to have that conversation. I think it makes sense to have time to review a written submission outside of the public view and to have a chance to study it and consider every single word. My word matters. That's why credibility is so needed in our city. We need to all care about our word, and whether we say something that's not accurate, put our name or our vote to something that's not accurate, that damages the credibility of the city.
And I think I'll take offense to that, Ben, because it's my credibility too. I put this together, and you know exactly where I've stood from day one on this. And if you're going to say false statements, list them, because this 2.3 million, again, out of $12.5 million budget, will have impacts upon our employees, the level of services that they provide to this city.
That is not true.
Prove it.
We have the option to do a number of things.
Like
raise a property tax, like impose a road fee. We have a host of nearly limitless number
I'm
of
talking to
options.
this initiative.
Yeah, the initiative makes no claim on what happens to our levels of service.
It says 2.3 million. Well, it says 2.625, but I think we know what the meaning of it is. It's $2.3 million first and foremost, before anything else, before police, fire, pool, rec, parks, anything else. It comes first. And I think we're going to find out in this next exercise what that means. 2.3 million impacts our city budget.
Question for you, Ben.
Please.
Is the main concern that you're being given a resolution that has some claims and information and action in it, and it's shocking to you, it's a surprise, you haven't had time to review it, and so you're reacting to it from that context? Or have you had enough time to review it, and so your reactions are absolutely the statements you're making that it is factually false? I mean, can you kind of help us understand where you're coming from?
It was passed to me 5 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
First chance to review it. So
I
you
see.
are right that there are certainly things in here that I have not had time to digest in the context and in the settings I would like to digest them. But beyond that, there are claims in here that look factually false to me, and I will not put my name to something that contains misrepresentations to the public in Pleasant Grove.
So part of
Both.
the response
And-
is part of the response would be first emotional.
Sure.
So when you're passed a document that contains the ramifications that this one might, and you're not given sufficient time to review it ahead of time, and then you're put in the public eye to review it, the reaction that you have might be negative and maybe even perhaps affect the nature of the responses given. Whereas if you were given some time to review the document ahead of time, you might have composure and react differently and come up with similar conclusions, but not necessarily the same language to describe what you're reading.
That's possible. Thanks,
Okay.
Mayor.
Well, let me just make an observation. About 2 weeks ago, was it? I returned from a business trip to someplace, and I got back, and that day was presented with a copy of a citizens initiative that affected the way we were going to be doing budgeting for the entire future of the city of Pleasant Grove. And our city administrator and our city finance director received the brunt of my emotional response to what was a shock, a surprise, something I did not have time to review. It was not given to me ahead of time. And somehow I was supposed to be able to react to this in a calm and rational manner with well thought through responses by the evening when it would be presented and we would have a discussion on it as a city council. So I apologized to the staff immediately after that, and I said, I recognize that some of the things that I've said right now may be an emotional response. and perhaps even some of the adjectives that I've used are not precisely the ones that I would use. And I think if you go back and look at the record for the evening that the Citizens Initiative was presented to us, that probably, my reactions and comments that night probably do not in any way reflect my initial reactions that I had in private with staff. But I witnessed some of the council members here looking at that initiative for the first time and being placed in the public eye and being recorded on record, and being able to play through very quickly the ramifications, the far-reaching ramifications of such a blunt instrument, and having to react to that in the public in a calm and rational manner in a matter of minutes, and then being asked to make some decisions or have a discussion on it. And perhaps even the council reacted somewhat emotionally at first. Maybe some of the words that they spoke were more out of emotion than out of rational thought. So the thought I want to put on the table as we move forward with whatever exercise we're going to do in this city, we kind of have to stop surprising ourselves. We kind of need to stop trying to look for ways to pick at the minutia of each other. There are factual things and things that can be read as non-factual in everywhere that we look. It really depends on the perspective of the individual that's looking at it. But right now, the real issue that's in front of us is we need to fund our roads. And there is on the table a citizens initiative that has been published. We've all had time to react to it. This is just one response. And there is yet 8 months of work to be done, working on a budget for next year and for the future, and presenting a proposal about how we're going to deal with roads absent the citizens initiative. How would we have normally gone about it, and what would the results be? And that all has to be sufficiently explained to the public and given time so that they can react to it. Now, we have a choice. We can spend the next 8 months arguing back and forth on the initiative itself and pick it apart. We can argue the process that's being used as the city council, and we can make our general statements about whether money can or cannot be cut. Or we can just roll up our sleeves and work together on coming up with the best solution that we can and working with the public and moving forward. My desire would be for all of us to stop copying Washington, D.C., and start focusing on Pleasant Grove, which, by the way, happens to be one of the most conservative, peaceful areas in the United States. I think we're different. We're peculiar and unique that way. We really ought to function that way, all of us, no matter who we are. So let's get back to this item here, and let's see if we can't move forward.
Mayor, I tell you what, I'll make a motion to move this to next week's agenda.
Okay, so that would be a motion to continue.
Yep. To the
All right,
28th.
All right, so we have a motion by Eric to continue this resolution to the 28th. We have a second by Lynn. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Sorry.
I've got a quick question. Can you get me a summary of the intended audience? When I pass a resolution or oppose a resolution, typically I know who it's going to.
I'm going to call the question. I think at this point we're looking to deflame and diffuse this argument rather than continue it. So I think we're just going to move on. And next week, after cooler heads prevail, we can have that discussion. In the interim, you're free to discuss that or at least answer the questions, offline.
Sure.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is continued, or the item is continued. All right. Lucky me, I will be out of town next week.
Oh.
Nope, I didn't say that beforehand. All right, this is item 11A. It's a discussion item. This is a discussion on the Citizens Initiative fiscal note. So it's not really a discussion on what was written by the sponsors. It's the work that the city council and the staff have had to do so far in order to try to assess what the fiscal impact of a resolution would be. And we've gone through an exercise where the council, 5 members of the council, have prioritized or assigned a relative priority to each item that staff has provided as part of the general fund. Thank you. I was going to say general plan. And those have been tallied together. And Scott's going to walk us through now the results of that compilation.
Thank you, Mayor. In fact, I'll maybe give a little context to leading up to what is about to be presented. When the Citizens Initiative was presented to the city, as we looked at state code, what the Citizens Initiative states, generally speaking, is that the city will take $2.625 million of general fund money and have that fund roads first in regards to the city budget on an annual basis. And now there's a little bit more to that as far as to what that all means, but in essence, short of a road fee or a property tax increase or something like that, this would be straight out of the general fund. We already have $325,000 a year out of our general fund that are earmarked for roads, and so our gap that is left in regards to the initiative is $2.3 million. So that's the number we've been using as we've gone through a process to try to determine what a loss of $2.3 million looks like in the general fund. When I say a loss, it's the money's there. It's just the use of the money is changed via what the Citizens Initiative says.
Scott, can
Yeah.
I ask a question just really quick because
Sure.
you just mentioned it? The $325,000 the council is currently allocating. I think there was a bill HB, and I'm not sure the name, that would, was it 362? Okay. That
The most recent one or
the one that yes, correct. Okay, HB 362. At this time, since that has not passed, though that general fund money could be used for something else at this time. So technically, if the initiative passes, then and that general fund money we can't bind a future council, and HB 362 doesn't pass, that future council could decide to use that money elsewhere. So then we would need to take the full $2.625 million that the initiative is requesting and use that. Is that correct? At this current time, we can take 2.3.
Yes. So maybe if I'm understanding what you're saying, is the $325,000 that I say is earmarked for roads is earmarked on an annual basis by our
Correct.
city council through the budgeting process. So it's built into the base budget. The city council could use that for any other expense that they choose. What HB 362 does, if that is passed, and that takes a vote of the Utah County residents to say that we are now going to take funding from sales tax, a new funding source, a quarter-cent sales tax. If we're going to take that funding into the city, then we cannot use that funding to replace our $325,000 out of the general fund. That locks
Not
that
permanent.
$325,000
Even with future
in
councils.
permanently. Yes.
Okay.
According to what
For
the
an
state law
indefinite
says.
amount of time.
Yeah. I mean,
That would become
That's it.
state law binding.
yes. So for the time being, though, like I said, it's an annual allocation. In our current budget proposal for our fiscal year 18 budget is to keep that $325,000 in there for roads.
This is an extension to that. If 362 passes at some future point after the Citizens Initiative passes, then whatever monies that we're putting towards the roads at that point in time out of the general fund become permanent.
Yes. Yes, because what they don't want you doing is taking that sales tax earmarked for roads and then freeing up general fund money elsewhere to spend it somewhere else. That's not the intent. The intent is for that new money to go specifically to roads, and whatever old money you have going to roads, they want to have locked in. So, and that's in the event that 362 is put back on the ballot by Utah County and passed by the citizens of Utah County. So when we when we talked about what $2.3 million looks like in the general fund of what would happen if roads are funded first, and now we have other services that we currently fund with that 2.3 million, what services does that affect? And so there's different methodologies that we could have gone about on this 2.3 million. The methodology that was agreed on by the majority of the council was to do this on a service basis. And so what we had Denise do is go through and sit down with the department heads this past 2 weeks, and they listed each of the services that we provide out of the general fund in a general manner. And so when we looked at it, there was 53 services that are funded through the general fund that are provided to our residents. Now, when I say it's general in nature, some of these are, when you look through it, I can show you here on the spreadsheet that it's one line item might have 7 different things in it. But we just kind of generalize that line item to say this is what's being provided. Now, some of the services most of the services that we show are external, something that the residents use and see on a regular basis. A couple of them are kind of internal services, like our memberships, things that serve the city council or the employees of the city, but it's not necessarily something that the citizens see or a service that they receive. That's a little bit more of an internal service. So as what we did is we divided up each of the services. You can see kind of what we did here. So here's the list of the services. We determined full-time employees that are tied to that service and part-time employees. And you can see a 6.38 and a 3.22. So what that means is that we have some employees that cross line items, or they cross services that are provided. And so we took a portion of their salary and benefits and we attached it to that particular service. So some places you'll see round numbers and other places you'll see numbers that are percentages. We looked at the expense, and this was from our budgeted numbers of fiscal year 2017. So there have been a couple things that have changed since then, but this gives us a pretty good snapshot as to the services being provided and what they cost. And then we also listed a revenue. So some of the specific services have a revenue attached to it, and so we wanted to, and that goes towards the cost of the service. So ambulance is a good one. That's a $1.4 million service. We get about $400,000 in ambulance fees. So the cost of the service out of the general fund is just over $1 million. So as we listed all these out, we gave spreadsheets to the city council and had them go through and mark each one of these services with the A, B, or C. A was considered vital, B was considered important, and C was considered an amenity. So as each of the council members did this, they turned those spreadsheets into Denise. And then A was assigned 3 points, a B was assigned 2 points, and a C was assigned 1 point. And so through all the spreadsheets, when you add them all up, that's where the ranking is. So 15 is the highest. That's all 5 council members giving that an A or a 3. So just to kind of give you an idea of what services were considered vital by everybody on the council, is our insurance, our liability and property insurance, legal, administrative services, our police patrol, investigations, other police support services. So these are some of the different things that we do within, so evidence, emergency management, things that fall within the police department. Our dispatch, fire suppression, fire ambulance, and fire prevention, which is our fire marshal. Our streets, which is mainly equipment and some vehicle expenses. Justice Court, was that a 15? I think. No, that's streets is the cutoff. Yeah. That was a 15. So that gives you an idea of just some of the services that were deemed vital by all 5 council members. And I just want to make a caveat here, and we've talked about this with the employees, is we go through this process, and as the council does these things, this is a snapshot of what $2.3 million could look like in our community. Does this mean that this is exactly what's going to happen if the initiative passes? I don't know. Because if the initiative does pass, we go through probably a further exercise to look at line item by line item and where the costs are. So we didn't have time to do that exercise. We had 2 weeks. And so we had enough time to put together something by service, but not necessarily go line by line. There are some potential cost savings in some of these line items that could be a part of that 2.3 million. But I'll say in a general sense, 2.3 million out of a $12.5 million general fund will mean a loss in jobs for the city, which will mean a reduction in service. We're a service industry as a city. As employees, we provide service to our residents. So really everything we do is something related to a service our residents are receiving. So as we reduce the amount of employees, then inevitably that service will drop to the tune of 2.3 million. So we went through a budget exercise last year where we cut $130,000 out of the general fund without an effect on services, and the city council earmarked that money for roads. So that was a process that we went through trying to do that without affecting services. At 2.3 million, as we go through this, we'll start seeing the impact on the services. So what we did is we took all the services and anything that fell, this is the rankings right here. The way it added up is anything between 7 and 11 were items that fell within our $2.3 million threshold. So these are the services that would be impacted if this were to go into place based on the citizen initiative passing. So we have the elected officials. That's the service, the wages, benefits, standard expenses that go with having that as part of our community. So that, I mean, we need to have a mayor and a city council. We don't necessarily have to pay them. So
that is correct.
Yes, I mean that's on the table. So that's one that's up there. So one of the things that kind of came up is the library kind of gets split in two. So a couple of the library services ranked high enough to stay out of that 2.3, which is our technology and our programming. So the programming is the kids programs that we run during the summer, where we have thousands of kids coming in and out doing reading programs or whatever. And then we also have our technology line, which is providing computers and other services. Now, we have employees that are tied to that. So, I mean, we have 3 employees in the library, full-time employees. And so each service, there was 4 general services through the library, so 0.75 of a person for each one. And then we have quite a few part-time employees, and this just shows that some of them would be affected. So that's the cost of the service. So as this plays out and how it looks right now, circulation and reference, and so that's the ability to help people find things and to check in, check out, put the books back once they're checked in. And then also our line item where we purchase new books and other audiovisual materials and the people that do that. So those, right now, that falls within the 2.3. So the part of our library that, according to this, would go away would be our books and the people that are helping people, so our circulation, checking things in and out. So again, that's probably not how that would play out, because I don't necessarily see our library all of a sudden saying we're not going to deal with books anymore. But just how the rankings played out, that's what it shows.
So Scott, give me an alternative. If we don't see it playing out that way, how would it play out?
Yeah, well, I mean, one way to look at it would be we want to keep the library intact. Mm-hmm. And so either we need to bump these 2 up and pull something else back down, or we pull these back down and keep the library together and we pull something back up. Okay. And so it's not, I don't think it's as simple as saying this is exactly what's going to happen. But I think what this shows as we go through it is there's significant impact on the services that the community provides. 2.3 million is a lot of money out of our general fund budget. So this shows, half of a library. It shows our parks. So really our whole parks department would be eliminated. This is our landscaping and maintenance. This is the people that mow the lawns, and they're the ones who water, and they're the ones who take care of it. And most of that cost there, the $709,000 is in employees, as far as that's concerned. So our playground maintenance, our ball field maintenance, those are two things that would be eliminated according to this.
So Scott?
Yeah.
So then that would affect the very last item, number 47 there, programs and facilities to a certain degree, as far as like baseball and soccer and things like that, if we're not maintaining the fields.
Yeah, I mean,
it is what it is.
We don't. So, recreation-wise, the recreation department is the one who provides the programming. The parks is the one who provides the facilities. So again, there's crossover in this stuff, and some of these departments bleed into each other as far as the service being provided. And so that would be something where a service would be split because the recreation programs and facilities is above the line. So we could continue to provide certain programs, but if we don't have now facilities to do that we're not maintaining, then that doesn't become possible. Now, we haven't done that analysis. We didn't go that deep. We didn't have time to go that deep to say, here's exactly the impact of these things. Again, I'm just trying to show that this is just a snapshot of what could happen. And so it gets, when we start talking about these very issues, there's analysis that needs to be done. And there's further things that we need to look at to say, this is exactly how it impacts us.
Let's be real clear on this.
Yeah.
Given the amount of time that was available to perform the analysis, this is a worst case scenario. If no further work was done to refine what this meant, you could have arbitrary cuts in the yellow area that would affect other areas without really having sat down and studied it. We would have to sit down as a council then with staff and go through all of those items in the yellow area at a much more detailed level to see what the interactions are, and then possibly cut something up higher or part of something up higher and keep something that's further down the list just because of the relationship between services.
That's correct. And again, that's just a further analysis of things that would have to be done. So some of the questions on specifics on exactly what all this means, it's a little bit difficult to stand here right now today and say this is exactly what it means. Again, it's a snapshot. It shows you some of the possibilities of things that would be considered because I don't want to sound like a broken record. 2.3 million is a lot of money out of our general fund, and it will
18.4%.
Yeah, I mean it will affect our services. It's a matter of which services it's going to affect, and that's the hard part of it, I think.
But with a time constraint, wouldn't a more responsible way to have approached this been to reduce every service by 18.4%? That's a lot faster, a lot easier, a lot more equitable, and doesn't lob off one of our services.
And that could still be done, Ben, if the council wants to make that decision. But this method here, if you look at the numbers in the right-hand column and divide them by 5, it gives everyone a general idea that, say number 44. The average score was 1.4. So of the 5 council members, if you took an average, you gave it somewhere between a C and a B, but closer to the C, slightly closer to the C. So no, it's not terrible, and it does provide more detail at the programmatic level. What it doesn't do is give us a finite look, like a bottom-up budget or a zero-based budget. We're not going to that depth. So just doing an across-the-board cut, to me, that's just closing your eyes.
But it more accurately reflects what we would actually do as a city.
I don't know. I don't know that it does, and that's the part that could be discussed back and forth for quite a while as we figure out together how to put a budget together. It's worthy of a discussion. We can certainly look at that over the next 8 months. But if the council wants to, they can certainly cut 18% off the top. Just assign 18% to everybody.
Seems more equitable. I guess that's my point.
Well, and in my opinion, part of the fiscal note at that point would be to show our residents what 18% out of each budget looks like. So that will be, here's how many police officers now that we're not going to have on the street. Here's what's going to be done in parks in order to meet that. So to just throw out a number of 18% out of each and show our residents that, I don't think tells the full story as to what that impact is. I think it needs to be tied to how this is going to impact the residents. And so, and there is a different level of analysis. At that point, you kick it back to the department heads and say, okay, 18.4, what has to go? And, you know, and I mean, the mayor stated, I think he stated it 2 weeks ago as well, this is the methodology that was determined, again, I think by the majority of the council, and this is where we're at, and this is why we have what's in front of you.
Understood.
So we have economic development. So we have a contract with somebody
Thank
that
you for
provides
picking
that service
such
for
a
us.
wonderful evening to come.
You guys are awesome.
You are well educated
They
now.
showed up at the right time, didn't
Yes,
they?
they did.
Should have come at 6 with the other scouts. Yeah. So there's the economic development, which is our contribution to the Chamber of Commerce, and also our contract employee that does that for us. With this, the swimming pool would be eliminated. The swim pool has the big number with part-timers. Again, these are seasonal. They just work for us for the summer while the pool's open. But there's 128 part-timers that are tied to that. There is a revenue associated with the swim pool, but it's not enough to cover the full cost of providing the service. The senior center fell within the 2.3. Custodial fell within the 2.3. Cemetery service falls within the 2.3. Employee services, so these are things, again, this is more of an internal service, something that generally the public wouldn't see. We have an employee assistant program. We have tuition reimbursement. We have a customer service program, incentives that we use for our employees, falls into that line item. And then this is our memberships. We have our Utah League of Cities and Towns, our Mountain Lands Association of Governments. UCMA is the membership that I have with the Utah City Managers Association. GFOA is Government Finance Officers Association. SHRM is HR. So those that are professionals in the city, we belong to our professional organizations, and it's customary for cities to pay for that for employees to belong to those services. City celebrations and community services, this would be the Miss PG pageant, fireworks, Heritage Days, Youth Court, Beautification Commission, Arbor Day. So again, we just threw all those into kind of one line item, and we do spend a little bit of money on providing that to the community. Also cultural arts, which is PG Players, Center Stage, Children's Choir, and the orchestra. There is a revenue attached with those, and so the impact on the general fund's a little bit minimal, but that did fall as part of the 2.3. Christmas lights, which I don't know, maybe the parks guys will vote for that one too. They spend a lot of time and effort hanging those lights. And we have a tree maintenance program, and then the parks, we use some greenhouse services to grow our flowers and to do some of those things to prepare them for planting. There were 3 items that fell in this same range that, as I reviewed them and as Denise and I talked about it, they have maybe more of a vital or contractual obligation on the city. So Fox Hollow Golf Course being one. That is an amenity that the city provides. It is a contract with 2 other cities that we have agreed to, number one, the 3 cities bonded about 10 years ago to do some, redo the clubhouse and redo the irrigation system at the golf course, and we still have another 10 years on that bond. As a city, we signed our name to that bond, and so if the service goes away, we're still obligated to make that payment, at least for the next 10 years.
So there would be, in that case, there would be no savings.
No,
So you just lose service, but you still make
there's
the
no
payment.
financial savings.
Okay.
So, and part of that is operations. So part of that's a bond payment, and part of that is operations. We are contractually obligated to pay the operations part of that with our agreement with the
Are
other
we
two
also
cities.
contractually obligated to provide water and a few other things?
Yes, there's, that was just a thing we worked out, I think, 3 or 4 years ago to
Anyway,
make sure,
go
yeah.
ahead.
So there's things that are tied with that. That's something that payment's going to be made regardless of whether we're participating in that service or not. Information technology, so this, in hindsight, it is an internal service. This is where we pay our person that oversees our networks and our computers and fixes them when they go down, or they service our dispatch to make sure it's functioning properly as far as the IT portion of that. Our city website falls under that, which is probably more of a amenity type deal as opposed to a vital service. Our internet, so we pay to have internet, and that falls into that category. We also have a financial software that we use, and that is something that is needed for us to continue to do our utility billing and manage our financials. So out of that 116,520, a large majority of that is something that I think is vital to what we provide. If we don't have internet, our communication now is kind of being email is the main way that I communicate with people. That would go away. So, and our financial software, we have to be able to bill people, and that's that financial billing comes out of that. And then the last one's facilities, and this one, we didn't, we went a little bit into this one to really try to figure out that 478. So one of that is we have one employee, one full-time employee, and one part-time employee. We also have an administrator so that's where the 0.1 comes from. That's part of their time that goes towards facilities. A good majority of that cost is our utilities. So that's our power and our gas. And so we felt that was pretty vital, that if we're going to operate these facilities, we do need power and gas to them. So the full 478 is not maybe deemed vital, but at least a good portion of that is. Like I said, we do have an employee in there. And the rest of it is, replacing light bulbs and doing a little bit of repainting or whatever we do to kind of keep our facilities looking okay.
So Scott, on
Yeah.
line 60,
Yes.
we show 2.19.
Yes.
And the number we're shooting for is 2.3?
Yeah. So thank
we're
you.
short about 1.08 or something?
Yeah, we're short about $1.8 million.
No.
Or sorry,
100,000, 108,000.
Oh my goodness! Please don't tell me we're short $1.8 million.
No, 108,000.
108,000. Thank you. And so I think tonight we need to figure out something up here that's going to move down.
So go down again.
Okay.
Where do these three that you've listed, where do they fall in up above?
Well, so one's a 10, one's an 8, and one's an 11.
But you pulled them out.
Yeah. So the IT was an 8. It would fit right in here. The Fox Hollow is a 10, so that fits up here. And then 11 is the top of the scale for things being considered.
So those bottom three then, they're kind of a mixed bag, because some of that you're saying is really not a benefit at all if you cut it, and it's sort of untouchable because of contracts. But some of the other stuff you said, there may be some cuts that you could do, or are you saying they're all untouchable?
No, I would say the facilities, there's probably things that we could do there. The IT, probably not so much. I would say a large majority of that is, again, we have to have somebody that makes sure our computers work and our network is functioning properly. And we need our financial software. Like I said, the city website and how much that might be $20,000 a year or something that we pay the person to keep that up and running and doing the maintenance on that. So that's something that would be on the table. We don't have that exact number, and that's something, if the city council send us back and said, okay, crack this down a little bit, that's something we could do. We could probably find the 108,000 between IT and facilities if we needed to get to our 2.3.
Okay, so go up a little bit then. Where's the break?
Breaks right here. So anything in yellow is part of the 2.3, right now 2.192.
So the next one would be item 47. I think Eric said this. That would, the money would either start coming from there or you trim a little bit from the.
Or you make this simple, right? Because we're about 1.8 or 108,000.
108,000, yeah.
Is because the library, if you're going to take away books, audio, circ, and ref, there really is, to a point, the technology and programming, you just have to bring the library down.
Completely?
Completely down, and then that would free up some money, and then I guess you could save the cemetery, 93,000, and then
Well-
you'd have access about 10,000.
I just have to say that you have 1,000 kids every day during the summer, and you can't do that with 2 people.
So at this point in the exercise, I think we're still high level.
Yes, but
What we're saying is.
I'm just saying, if,
There's so much crossover that,
so,
To go down to a level of just discussing library would be not practical for this exercise, because then we'd end up doing that with every service.
no, because library is split. So you have part of library down below and part of library up above. To maintain the library up above, what you're asking is for 2 people to do 1,000 kids a day. So I'm saying, this is the only low level I'm going to get to, because the library is split. So I just don't think it's functional to have the library split.
Okay. In order to play that out, you're suggesting that the library portion of this go back up into the part that's not cut, not affected.
I'm saying move library down.
The whole thing.
Yes.
So take the part that's split off now in the white and bring it down into the yellow?
Yes.
So if you do that, that gets us
800.
to 2.4 million now. So I don't know if you have something in the yellow you want to move up if you're going to head down that
cemetery
road.
About that, 93,000.
All right, so and I don't know, is cemetery contractual? Like, do we have contracts
We're
with
not
dead
required
people?
to provide cemetery as a service as a city.
But what
But
about
do people have a lot that they have bought and paid for that is not yet being used?
Correct.
Yes.
So then that's contractual.
Well, yeah. So again, we could break down every single one of these to that manner and try to figure out exactly what we have to do, what's not touchable or what is. And so it's, again, because of the high level nature, we're really just dealing
I'm trying to
with
be
the
high,
service.
but I'm also trying to functionally figure out
I understand.
who's going to dig the grave.
I understand.
I don't think we can do that exercise tonight. I think that's part of the exercise that comes after.
So I'm looking at whole units, and I'm also trying to figure out what is an absolute. And I think for me, cemetery was up above because there are some contractual agreements that have been made.
Right. So for purposes of the discussion, though, in order to have our 100-word summary by next Tuesday so that the council can vote on it,
So I think you need to
unless we want to do a deep dive on every one of those and get every council person's opinion on which items they're thinking need to be moved around, I don't think we have that kind of
And I understand.
time.
I understand.
You okay with that? I mean, it's not that I'm not placing a value. I'm
Right.
saying,
I'm looking at the service and the employees and what that means that they're left doing.
right. So
And
we'd have to do
also-
that to all of them.
Yes.
not just one.
But I think the cemetery is contractual. I think it needs to go back up.
Okay. All right.
I wonder if you could just take a straw poll and see how many people actually want to give up any of their services.
Amongst the citizens, ask the people in the room.
Who wants to give up any of their services? I'd just kind of like to see. I know the people who voted for me didn't want to give up any of their services.
Is that representative?
No.
I-
We have people from
I
other
understand the
cities.
sentiment, Lynn,
wanna
and
say
I know where you're going with it. One thing I kind of hesitate to do is just put information out there that may not really be useful, you know? Yeah.
Well, to follow up on that, we're creating a fiscal note.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing today. And so to go to the overall question of do we want to see levels of service reduced, that's probably not what's really on the table. We're just obligated to show the impact on the general fund budget if the initiative were to pass. That's what we're doing today.
Let's ask a different kind of a question. You've got in front of you, without further analysis, a scenario that identifies 2.2 million, roughly, of general fund money that would be removed from the general fund and allocated towards roads exclusively should the citizen initiative pass. The exact play out of this could be worked out between now and the time that it goes to ballot so that it's more refined and we could be more surgical, if you will, for questions like what you just raised. Now that's more of a question on my part, and I need to understand, is that doable legally?
Well, my response to that is if we're going to get surgical on any service, it's going to be kind of hard to just pinpoint what services we want to get surgical on and
Not
which ones
tonight.
we don't.
Not tonight and not between now and next Tuesday.
Oh, yeah.
After.
But over
Yeah,
the
yeah,
space
yeah.
of 6 months.
Over the
Oh, yeah,
space of the next
yeah.
6 months.
No, over the space
But
of-
what I'm asking is, we're going to craft a 100-word response. This becomes the backup. Is there a way to craft that in so that we can come back and say we would be looking more closely at this to see where there are contractual dependencies, where there are interdependencies between the service and it fails when you take this much out of it? And
I
so
think-
therefore there could be adjustment.
I think to answer your question, there's actually two things that have to be prepared. One is what they call the initial fiscal note. That particular document does not have a word limit on it. And I believe we can go into a little more detail in that document. We could put in some language that says this is not a final answer. Obviously, City Council reserves its right to further refine the responses and the fiscal impacts. The 100-word summary that needs to be prepared probably does not have the ability to provide for that.
Right.
Nor do we have the ability to go in and change it after, because that's the language that goes on the top of each signature page on the petition. It's also my understanding that that's the information that will be included in the voter information pamphlet. So it's pretty critical that we get a good, objective, reasonable message initially, because we don't have an opportunity to change our message afterwards. The more detailed initial fiscal note can include some language that would provide for some further refinement after, if the initiative passed. Does that answer your question?
Where, yes, where does the non-100, you called it the initial fiscal impact?
Yes, so that
Where does that end? How does that get circulated?
That is actually, my understanding, filed with the Lieutenant Governor's office with the initiative itself.
But does it see the light of day? Do citizens get to look at
Well,
that?
they would have the opportunity to see it, sure, and we would have the opportunity to publicize it and post it in any manner that we wanted. It'll be a public document.
I think that's something that we would want to have the residents be able to take a look at it. In my mind, we'd put it on our website or whatever, so it's available. But what you're saying is, once the fiscal note is submitted, we can't change that either on by March 28th.
Right. There's no, once you submit it, that's what it is. The only provision in the statute is after the initiative goes to the ballot, if it's approved, our finance officer has to do another fiscal impact statement called the final fiscal impact statement. And if there is a difference of 25%, I believe, don't quote me on the 25, might be 35, between what the initial estimate was and what the final actual impact is, then the city council has the opportunity to actually reject the ordinance that's been adopted by the initiative.
Okay, but for purposes of crafting the 100-word response and the initial documentation that goes with it, it can be fairly straightforward. The goal is 2.3 million.
Right.
And we've come up with, at this point in time, the amount and the potential impacted areas based on a prioritized list. We haven't come up with a final list. We haven't come up with the exact final dollar amount, but we've met the initial impact, we've met the initial requirement.
Right. So I'm envisioning something in the 100 words that says it's 18 point whatever % you said of the general fund budget, which would necessitate, significant impacts on the remaining operations, and then use what you decide tonight in terms of the services that will probably be eliminated.
Okay, and it's probably.
Probably.
I would say could be.
Could
be.
Yeah.
Might be.
Yeah.
I mean, because this kind of analysis, going through and hearing from everyone and having the fine tuning and the relationships between them and which services get affected contractually, which ones fail when you remove that much out of them, therefore you just remove the whole thing rather than, that's work that can still be accomplished over the next 6 months.
It doesn't change the fiscal note, but it's further analysis that the staff can do and show the city council what those relationships are.
Okay, so the question comes back to the council then. You've got in front of you the initial work that's been done by yourselves and staff to identify approximately 2.2 million in funds, and the ones in yellow, these are the services that could potentially be affected the most from this 2.2 million. Are you comfortable putting this forward along with the rest of it and having Tina prepare the 100-word statement with the understanding that after that statement is all submitted, we would continue our work to put together a more refined list and check the dependencies?
I'm not comfortable with the methodology as I've articulated on multiple occasions. For one thing, we ought to put the $475,000 of new money in this chart, which could save a lot of programs. Several programs that are important to me are maybe vital to me, are inaccurately reflected in this narrative of fiscal impact, and wouldn't we wouldn't cut all custodial work. You can't cut all custodial work. We can't operate in filth. Let the record reflect that I don't want to operate in filth. I don't want our city staff to operate in filth. It's not reflective of what would actually be done. So
But I think that's subjective pretty much with every line item. We could say that about every line item. It's very
So the critical question is how accurate and thorough are our language and statements and disclaimers about this is a scenario that is not what would actually be done, but could be done to achieve $2.3 million in savings if you ignore new money that we shouldn't ignore, and if we didn't pursue funding options that we would pursue, and is one option of several that could be played out as a fiscal impact if you wanted to look at fiscal impact and exclude the savings that would come from getting our roads fully funded. 70, $80 million of savings for a budget that would be saved by not having to rebuild failed roads in 20 years.
So Ben, I think
Right.
that part of what you're saying is correct, but when you extrapolate to the what ifs or the undecided new revenues and things, I think that's, at this point, it hasn't even been discussed. It's speculation.
It has been discussed, the
Not
$475,000.
raising taxes or other methods of being creative. That hasn't been fully exhausted.
I agree with
And
that.
so for us to just make a statement at this point that, as I was saying the same thing to Diana, only in the opposite direction, to just single out one line item, in this case the 475, and say, well, that should all be included, I think there again, it needs to be looked at. Some of that probably needs to be used for things that it was identified for. And some of it might be able to be trimmed and used as part of this 2.3. But until the council as a whole digs into that, we don't have that breakdown.
But we ought to have it on this chart as money that's available to achieve our goal. It should be on this chart, right?
And how would you put it on there?
Well, the chart's based on services, so the 475 is rolled into the services provided. This is fiscal year 17, so the 475 isn't contemplated in these numbers here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we would implement in 2018, right?
Yeah, so if when we go through our budget process for fiscal year 18, if the city council comes back and says all new money goes towards roads, that would change how roads are funded. We're now coming, we're going to have, $800,000 now out of the general fund going towards roads. So that pulls that number back that the city's going to be required if the initiative passes. But that is a discussion that hasn't happened yet to say, okay, as a city, we're willing to do that. That's why it's not on the list. It's not contemplated as a service. That's a
So your point
That's
about
a number.
having that discussion is valid. I would think that it's premature for us to just call it out as a single line item and say in a summary statement that this could all be used for, because that discussion hasn't really been thought through.
We would do that before we cut something, like our
We
custodial
would do
work.
that before we finalized the future of our budget, but it would not be part of this exercise, not part of what has to be done by next Tuesday by law.
So I renew my objection to the process and
Okay.
methodology.
Thank you. Okay, others?
So we still need to decide where we're still not quite at 2.3 yet,
Need
right?
another 108,000.
But should we go to the 2.6 because that's what the initiative states is 2.625?
No, in my opinion, no, because we already earmarked 325 out of
Okay.
general fund.
But that could
And-
change.
Well, if the council says we don't want to do that anymore, then we find another 325 out of the general
Okay.
fund.
So we still need another 108,000, is that correct?
So, and that's why I was trying to move cemetery up.
Understood.
Okay, thank you.
Do you all want to move the cemetery? Do you all want to move the library? What is it that you want to do to come up with 108?
Actually, I'm still short on at cemetery, aren't I?
1,000.
No,
So
it's 93.
again, now you've heard enough of me, but I'm against what this initiative is causing us to do here.
Understood.
And it gets back to my point of it shows you what 2.3 million does to our budget and to the employees that shows that level of service. But if you're going to get to the 2.3 million, because you have the library down here being cut on the critical items, you should just go ahead and move programming technology down there because it's going to affect those across. It just is. And so
So
that's
help me with
that's
which-
$210,000.
What line item are you on?
That's 38 and 39. So that's going to move to about roughly $210,000 down.
Oh, okay. You're talking about 105.5
Mhm.
for technology on the library and 108 for,
105,
105.
26. That would move about.
and
roughly-
108, right?
Yep.
So 105 and 108.
105, 514 and
Right.
105, 026.
108, 026. Do I have a different number?
No, that,
I'm just looking at the numbers on the,
Just take away that. So it's-
column
Oh, you're
G.
looking at the other-
Yeah,
other-
column G.
I'm looking at the wrong column. You're looking at net.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you take those two, and that gives you the 210, and then that way you could roughly save the cemetery and move that up because of some of the discussions we've had. That gives you $10,000 extra.
I think that, doesn't that put it right on 2.3
You'd
to
have
do that? 210 minus 93 is, oh no,
Gonna
that's
get you
one,
close.
is that 117?
530.
Yeah, that's 117. So
540.
that's $10,000. You're right.
Again, council, are you comfortable with that approach?
Actually, I'm not comfortable at all.
Okay.
But
I have a, and Jacob, I'm going to speak to you for a second, Mr. Zantz. Because you're the designated sponsor of the initiative.
Go ahead.
Earlier in the meeting, you said, let's come together, let's compromise, let's work together. I'm going to offer a proposal to you. Would you be willing to withdraw the initiative and come to the table with the mayor, council, and staff and not put our community through another tumultuous 6 months we've already experienced with a public safety building? And would you be willing to come together and work with us on a solution for road funding that does not pit people against each other, that does not cut services, that does not ask people, when you go door to door, to choose between the roads and community services? Would you be willing to do that? Because I'm willing. I don't want to put our community through this. Even tonight, looking at those, it will divide our community even more. It already has started since the initiative came forth. Would you be willing to work with us, you and the other sponsors of this initiative, and help us find a solution without doing the initiative? I know we can find a way. I know we can.
I can speak for myself. I'm definitely willing to work together with you to come up with a solution. I can't say that I would stop the initiative from moving forward. Again, it was sponsored by 6 people. They each would have to give their own opinion on that. We all agreed with one thing, which was fund roads first through the general fund and allow the city to fund everything else the way that they choose that they would like to fund it. So that's what we agreed on. I'd have to discuss with them if they wanted to get together with the city. I personally would love to get together with you to come up with some solutions and to find a middle ground.
Can you talk to them before any more staff time and anything else is done on this? Can you talk to them tonight and let us know by tomorrow if that's a possibility to do that?
Yes, I can do that. I can talk to them about that and get back
And
to
then
you
you'll
by
let us
tomorrow.
know by tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see, is everybody?
So Jacob,
I think everybody's here.
I have one other question to go along with that.
Go ahead.
You said about finding some other solutions to that. Is that getting back to the property tax? Let's go with this scenario, okay?
Mhm.
How would you go about bringing those back if you were to bring that proposal to the city?
Well, a lot of the solutions that I've been thinking of, Ben has already mentioned, diving deep into the budget to find out what we can get out of it first, and then yes, coming to the citizens after that if you want to ask for more money.
In the form of
Well, legally,
taxes?
it would be some sort of increase in tax, or well, I guess fees would be something that you could increase as well, but that would be part of looking for things in the budget.
So we have to give direction to staff tonight because I know you don't have you need to talk to the other signers on the initiative. But so we'll finish our exercise tonight, but you will talk to them and let us know by tomorrow, is that correct? If we can work together without having to do a city initiative for this issue.
Yes, I can ask them that.
Okay, I would appreciate that. Because I know there's other options than
Would it
putting the
be-
community through this.
Would it be possible for you to email me exactly what you're asking me right now, so I can email it out to them?
I'll just
Is that
go on
okay?
record. Yeah, and I mean, I'll send you an email as well.
That'd be great. Awesome.
But just specifically ask them if they're willing to withdraw the initiative and come to the table with the mayor, council, and staff and work with us on finding a solution that does not include an initiative that you would go to door and take out to the community and work with us on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I believe I understand what you're asking.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
So numerically, if we were to take the 2.3 million, subtract out the 2.192583, you come up with basically 107,407 as a delta. You bring back in the library technology and programming, and you take out the cemetery. You're overcutting $12,836. One of your higher priorities that's currently in the yellow is Parks Playground Maintenance at $13,350. And now you're $514 difference.
That'd be great.
Wait, say that again.
So if you move cemetery above the line,
Yes,
and you bring library technology and programming below the line,
correct.
you can also take playground maintenance and move it above the line, and you'd only be off by $514, which is less than a rounding error.
I think personally, I think that's a good solution so that we have our 2.3. We can move forward on having Denise redo the spreadsheet, send it back out to you tomorrow so you can see kind of how that looks and what it adds up to. And then
based off that, Tina will create the 100-word.
Yeah, according to the code, Tina and Denise sit down and create the 100-word. It'd be something that we'd have on the agenda for next Tuesday Does it have to be done before then? Oh, sorry, it's not something that the council votes on.
100-word summary is not something that requires council action. So I will, and Denise and I will work on what we think the direction has been and come up with proposals and drafts and circulate them for your comment. But it's not something that requires a council motion and vote at this point. And also the deadline is Tuesday the 28th. And so if we wait until after city council meeting on Tuesday night and we get out at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, I mean, technically we're past the deadline. So my understanding is the deadline is 5 o'clock business hours on the 28th.
Do you want input and feedback on the
Yes,
phrasing?
I'm
Circulate to us when it's drafted.
exactly. I'm planning on getting your input and comments and any suggested changes that I want that. It's not required for it to be on a council agenda for approval.
Okay.
So the question was, did you want to go ahead and move those items above the line and the other ones below the line?
We have to hit our commanded number.
According to the initiative, if you're going to get the 2.3, you're going to have to do that scenario or something close to it. And so, yes.
Okay, so moving it the way I just suggested, it actually comes out at 2296486. So it's 35 something off, 3,500
35
off.
short or 30?
Short.
I think that's okay.
That's a 1%.
No, I've been very, very deliberate for
for
a week.
These are budget numbers.
With the understanding that the document the summary document, it will have caveats in there that this is not a final way that it will
Yep.
play out.
It's a way that it could happen.
Okay, and then we will come back and do the exercise of refining.
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll move in that direction if that's the direction we're receiving. And like I said, Denise can redo that spreadsheet and send it back out tomorrow so everybody can see what that is. and then Tina and Denise will start working on the summary statement and circulate it to you. We probably need to turn that in, it sounds like, sometime before 5 o'clock next Tuesday.
So council, is that the direction you want to move in?
Yes.
No, I think there are better directions.
With the direction that's been given, that we went forward, filling out the information. That's the direction we were given and voted upon, so yes.
Okay.
It's an exercise, so.
Hey, straw poll says we're going to move forward. Let's submit that. Have Tina prepare the information and go from there.
Here's what's not going to happen, Ben, is you're not going to get a say that you didn't want to cut any services. So let's make that very clear. That we all went through this exercise that we all agreed on and gave the staff 2 weeks. They took 2 weeks. You asked Tina how much time she spent on Eric, helping him to making sure it was legal. Half an hour. 2 weeks they spent on this. So I'm going to tell you that's not going to happen. If I see anywhere on social media, I'll be very upset because you agreed to this process. It may not be the method you wanted, but we agreed and we gave staff direction to do that. So now we all agree on moving forward. And you say no, and that's not going to come back that you don't want to cut services. That's wrong. So I'm prefacing that right now.
For the record, I objected to the methodology 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago, and tonight. I think there's a better methodology that would be more fair to all of our departments, more honest and more accurate to the public, and there are solutions that are less painful than this.
Then put your pen to the paper and bring that. This is getting beyond ridiculous, Ben. Put your pen to the paper and bring your other solutions.
All right.
Mayor,
Move on.
we're trying to work together. And you say no, no, no every time. We were given this exercise and this initiative to do this, and you say no?
I've given other solutions for years. Could I articulate one, Mayor? Would it be okay if I have a few minutes to talk about a specific solution that would be
I think
less
we
want to see it in writing.
Mayor, I think we
I think
agreed
we
upon
just-
this and everyone voted for it.
Let's just cut off the discussion and the two of you can have a private discussion. Let's move on to item 12. We're not open for the public to input. I'm sorry, Sandy. Privately, yeah. Yep. Thank you.
Wait, I want to say something before you, and I'll be calm. So, in the open session, I just had some feelings. This has been very, very painful, and I hope I'm on. This has been very, very painful, and I think the impetus behind Eric's resolution was that we cannot see a way to cut 2.3, 2.6 without compromising a service. And I've actually done some research. We're a very poor city. I don't know if you know this. We're a very, very poor city. For example, there's a neighboring city that has almost the exact same amount of miles and this about 8,000 residents less, and they have twice the budget and they offer the same services. So as I was going through this very legitimately, trying to figure out what to cut, there is, for every dollar that we have, there is a service or a value that is attached to it. I also, I want to reiterate the fact that 75% of our budget is people. And these are people that have been doing more for less, almost twice as much for the same price. But this is the point that I just really want to make. And that is, and I'm sorry, Dean, but this is leadership. And this is what it looks like. A bunch of people trying to do a very, very difficult thing. I also want to say one thing about social media. You may not agree with us, but we do represent someone. So for example, I have received a lot of conversations. Someone asked, what is the most important service? And it's actually the one that you're using at that moment. So when you flush your toilet, or when you're playing Frisbee or drinking water, that's the most important service. And so when I take someone's, so for example, everybody in here is one voice out of 38,000. You're one home out of 9,000. And just because some homes are louder than others does not diminish the equality of another home. So for example, I have soccer moms, and I have football dads, and I have baseball dads who are saying, please don't cut my service. Don't cut my value of my town. And I had a daughter come home. So I don't know, for those of you that don't follow Facebook, there's been some very, very mean things said about council. My daughter came home from high school and said that in class, someone said that council was corrupt. So that's my house and my daughter. So please be very, very careful with the words that you choose. Ben, it is about words. So
Words matter.
Words matter. So I know that the intent is to discredit council, but you got to remember that we represent someone. So just because you're loud doesn't mean that you're the most important. It means that you're one. So be respectful of the people that we each represent. Ben represents people, Sid represents people, the mayor represents people. Let me honor the people that I represent without harsh criticism. I honor the services that have been offered to all of us that we pay for. And I'm very, very happy with the quality of service that we receive. This is a 25-year problem. Does everybody understand that? This is a 25-year problem. And we're trying our darndest to solve it. Anyway.
Okay, we'll move on now. Okay, item number 12 is to review and discuss the March 28th City Council agenda. So the one I have in front of me is the March 22nd. This is tomorrow.
So we can review both of those.
Yeah, let's do tomorrow's.
So for tomorrow, we will be interviewing 4 all right, let's try this again. We'll be interviewing 4 general contractors for a selection of one to build our public safety facilities. We're starting at 6. They have a half hour, 20 minutes to present, 10 minutes to ask questions. After the 4 presentations, we'll enter into an executive session. The council, if they choose, can make a decision that night. We do have it noticed that you can make a decision. If you need additional time or whatever, then it can be continued. But
that's the closed session.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's all we're doing tomorrow night. That's the only thing we have on the agenda.
All right.
For the 28th, we have a public hearing on a code text amendment that is a request from a developer to allow development on Main Street to be 5 stories. Right now, the height limit is 4 stories. They're asking for a 5th story on a potential project in the city. So that's what the public hearing's for, and that's what the city council will consider as whether that's something that's acceptable to you. We have since added the resolution that was continued today will be on next week. And then we do need a decision on the vote by mail, which is part of the budget process, but we have to give the county notification by April 3rd whether we're going to do that or not. So we'll come back with the details on that and revisit that with direction from the council on whether you want to do that or not for this upcoming year.
So is that one going to be on there as well?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so it should be a fairly short meeting.
Oh, and it starts at 5 o'clock on the 28th.
Okay.
I know we had some obligations by some council members, and so we moved it up to 5 o'clock.
Okay. All right, coming back to tonight. Neighborhood and staff business. Libby, do you have anything? Okay. Right. Thank you, Libby. Ken?
Just wanted to mention that the end of last week, we did issue a building permit to the Void, even though they've been kind of doing groundwork for a while, but now they have an official building permit to go forward with the full construction of that building. We are looking at a minor site plan amendment for the Evermore Gardens, but that should be approved soon, and we hope that we'll be issuing building permit on that as well.
Great. Thank you. David?
Nothing.
Dion?
Nothing.
Marty?
Here's a little handout with regards to Canyon Road. We'll get this posted on the website. It came from Utah County with regards to the projected schedule for reconstruction of that road. We held our kickoff meeting yesterday with the county and the engineer, so that's positive.
That's good.
We have 4 projects bidding this week. So 700 South, 900 South, the Walker Tank project, and then our streets projects, which will be the construction of those roads, which utility projects are being done under. So it'll be a very busy spring and should have projects coming before you in the next 2 to 3 weeks for awards. So you'll see some movement there. And I'll be gone the next 3 days.
Have fun.
Okay, thank you.
Starting right now.
I'm out.
Dave?
Nothing.
Nothing? Is Mike back there? Mike? The other mic, right? Different mic. I heard the voice. Okay. Sherry?
So I sent an email out to all of you advertising a program we have coming up on April 12th, and Ken Young has published a couple of books, and we're doing a book signing program with him. So it'd be great if you can all come support the library and him. And this week we have an astronomy program, a computer coding program, and a bunch of others. So we're busy, and we do have a lot of programs in addition to summer reading.
Thank you. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Denise? Scott?
No.
Tina? Kathy? Diana?
No, I think I covered it.
Okay. Eric?
I've talked enough.
Okay. Sid?
Oh, I do have something.
Go ahead.
I'm not quite done.
Okay.
Because I have sat here calm and quiet during the meeting, and we have several parks employees sitting right back there, and according to this initiative, you wouldn't have jobs. So I want to make sure that when we say real lives, we're talking real lives here. I'm not calm about this anymore. I'm not. I've been asked against what I value and believe as a council member to go through a list and find services that I don't believe should be cut. So I'm not calm anymore. I've sat here long enough and tried to remain calm and quiet about this. I've asked for a resolution from this group to not do this to our community. I'm not calm. And you know what? The public shouldn't be either. Our community should be angry at what's happening. If we haven't been through enough in the past 3 years, this is just putting it over the edge. I am praying, I honestly, Mr. Zons, if we can work together to find a solution without having to do this to our community, please. That's my hope. But Mayor, it's true, I'm not calm anymore. This is the final straw. I don't know, I can't imagine what's next after this. But I will tell the employees and I will tell the community, I will do everything I can to make sure that we do not cut services, because that's the reason you live here in Pleasant Grove. That's the reason you work for Pleasant Grove. That's the reason you're an employee and a resident. And I will do everything I can because this is my hometown. I grew up participating in these services. It's part of who I am as a person, part of who my kids are because they're participating in these services. If you think for a second I'm going to let this just slide on through and not get angry or upset or not and just remain calm, no. This is affecting the lives of people in our community. That's all.
Okay. Lynn?
Thank you, Sid. I'm good.
Okay. Ben?
One thing I'd like to always invite you guys to is the Rotary Club meetings when we have a speaker that I think would be of interest to the members of our council. This Thursday, our speaker is Senator Dan Hemmert, who's our area senator, great guy, and he'll be talking about things that he learned in his first session as our senator. It would be worth attending for members of the public and members of the city council. Rotary Club meets on Thursdays at the Chubby's restaurant in the back banquet hall, and Dan Hemmert's got a lot of insights and a good relationship to have in terms of working with the state to get funding. So I invite everyone to that if you happen to be free. Thursday, it would be a great one to attend. And I didn't get you an email, Scott, because I had a recruiting lunch with a LA attorney I was trying to convince to come to our firm, but I'm going to make some changes so that I can bring the secret weapon, Rebecca, to the city trivia games, the admin team's secret weapon. So I'll plan to be there. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, looking at the calendar, we have our meeting tomorrow night to select, possibly select the contractor that will build the public safety buildings. We do have that meeting next week, Tuesday, that we added to the schedule. We canceled the meeting on April 4th. Okay. And I will be out of town from the 26th, basically until the 8th. So
Enjoy.
Eric, enjoy. All right, if there's no other business, we're going to move to a closed meeting. We need an executive session to discuss the sale of real property.
Mayor, I make the motion.
No action on that one after. Okay, so there might be action, so if you want to hang around to find out what that is, you're welcome to.
Here, I'll make the motion that we go into an executive session to discuss the sale, purchase, or lease of real property.
Okay?
Second.
We have a motion by Ben, a second by Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are taking a bio break.